Ikaw ba ay isang rehistradong botante para sa May 9, 2022 elections? Narito ang 12 bagay na hindi mo dapat gawin bago, sa araw mismo at pagkatapos ng eleksyon batay sa Omnibus Election Code at sa mga panuntunan ng Commission on Elections. Huwag ibenta ang iyong boto. Ang pagbili ng boto o pagbenta ng boto ay mahigpit na ipinagbabawal sa ilalim ng Omnibus Election Code. Ito ay may kaukulang parusa ng pagkakakulong mula 1 hanggang 6 na taon, pagkadiskwalipika sa pagsilbi sa isang pampublikong posisyon at pagkawala ng karapatang bumoto. Ang isang partidong politikal na mapapatunayang bumili o nagbenta ng boto ay pamumultahin na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Huwag pagpustahan ang resulta ng eleksyon. Ang kahit na anong pera o bagay na may halaga na itinaya sa pustahan para sa resulta ng eleksyon ay mapupunta sa estado. Huwag pilitin o takutin ang iyong mga subordinates, kabilang ang mga miyembro ng parokya o simbahan, mga kasambahay, o mga nangungupahan para ikampanya o iboto o hindi iboto ang isang kandidato. Huwag pilitin o takutin sa direkta o hindi direktang paraan ang kahit na sinong opisyal o kawani para sa eleksyon. Huwag magdala ng baril sa labas ng iyong bahay o lugar ng trabaho. Kahit na ikaw ang may permit to carry, kailangan mo pa rin ng sulat mula sa COMELEC na nagsasaad na ikaw ay maaaring magbitbit ng baril sa labas. Huwag bumoto ng higit sa 1 beses sa isang eleksyon. Huwag bumoto kung ikaw ay hindi rehistradong botante. Ang double voting o mas kilala sa tawag na flying voter ay may kaukulang parusa ng pagkabilanggo ng hanggang 6 na taon at multa na hanggang 10,000 piso. Huwag bumoto bilang kahalili ng isang rehistradong botante kahit pa may pahintulot. Huwag gumamit ng ibang balota maliban sa ibibigay ng Board of Election Inspectors. Ipinagbabawal din ang pagkakaroon ng higit sa isang official ballot. Huwag picturean ang iyong balota. Hindi rin pinapayagan ang mag-selfie kasama ng iyong balota. Huwag magbitbit ng nakamamatay na armas sa loob ng presinto kung saan ka boboto at sa loob ng radius na 100 metro mula sa presinto sa araw ng eleksyon. Huwag magbenta, mag-alok, bumili, maghain, o kumuha ng alak at iba pang nakakalasing ng inumin 1 araw bago ang eleksyon at sa mismong araw ng eleksyon. Ang mga hotels at establisimento lamang na pinapayagan ng Department of Tourism na magsilbi ng alak sa mga dayuhang turista ang maaaring di masaklawan ng liquor ban. Huwag magdaos o makilahok sa sabong, boxing, karera ng kabayo, hay-alay at iba pang kahalintulad na laro sa araw ng eleksyon. Bawat boto ay mahalaga at ang isang boto ay maaaring magresulta sa 6 na taon na maayos na pamamalakad ng gobyerno at matatag na ekonomiya o 6 na taon na talamak ang korupsyon, mataas ang porsyento ng mga walang trabaho at mas laganap na kahirapan. Protektahan mo ang iyong kinabukasan sa pamamagitan ng hindi pagbenta ng iyong boto. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama.
Botante ka ba para sa May 9, 2022 nga eleksyon? Aniya ang 12 kabutang nga dili nimo angay buhaton sa panahon o pagkahuman sa eleksyon sumala sa Omnibus Election Code ug kasamtangang giya sa Commission on Elections. Ayaw ibaligya ang imong boto. Ang pagbaligya o pagpalit sa boto Usa ka ginadili nga lihok sa ilalom sa Omnibus Election Code ug aduna kinisilot nga pagkapriso ug usa hangtod 6 ka tuig, diskwalipikasyon sa paghawid og pampublikong posisyon ug pagkawagtang sa katungod sa pagboto. Ang bisan unsang partidong politikal nga masakpan nga sad-an mamahimong magmulta og dili ubos sa 10,000. Ayaw pakipusta sa resulta sa eleksyon. Ginadili ang pagpusta sa resulta sa eleksyon. Ang bisan unsa nga kwarta o bililhong butang nga gipusta maadto sa gobyerno. Ayaw pamugos, panghulga o panghadlok sa imong mga sakop, lakip na ang mga parokyano, katabang, saop ug uban pa sa pangampanya o pagboto alang o batok sa bisan kinsang kandidato. Ayaw pamugos, panghulga o panghadlok sa bisan kinsang opisyal sa eleksyon o empleyado. Ayaw pagdala og mga armas gawas sa imong panimalay o sa lugar sa negosyo. Maski aduna kay permiso sa pagdala niini, manginahanglan gihapon og nakasulat nga pagtugot gikan sa COMELEC. Ayaw pagboto og sobra sa usa sa parehong eleksyon. Ayaw pagboto kung ikaw dili rehistrado nga botante. Ang kaduha nga pagboto o ang ginatawag nga flying voter adunay silot nga 6 ka tuig nga pagkakulong ug multa nga kutob sa 10,000. Ayaw pagboto puli sa laing botante maski aduna o walay pagtugot gikan kaniya. Ayaw paggamit og ubang balota gawas sa gihatag sa Board of Election Inspectors. Iligal usab ang adunay sobra sa usa ka opisyal nga balota. Ayaw pagkuha og litrato sa imong gisulatan nga balota. Ayaw usab pagkuha og selfie kauban ang imong gisulatang balota. Ayaw pagdala og makamatay nga hinagiban sa presinto. Kung diin magboto ug sulod sa 100 ka metros sa adlaw sa eleksyon. Ayaw pagbaligya, pagtanyag, pagpalit, pag-alagad o pag-inom og makahibog nga ilimnon. Usa ka adlaw bag-o ang eleksyon o sa mismong adlaw sa eleksyon. Walay labot sa liquor ban ang mga hotel o ubang establisemento nga gitugutan sa Department of Tourism nga mag-alagad sa mga langyaw nga turista. Ayaw pag-apil o pag-organisa og mga sabong, boxing, lumba sa kabayo, hayalay, o maski unsang kaparehong dula sa adlaw sa eleksyon. Ang matag boto importante, ug ang usa ka boto mamahimo og kalainan sa 6 ka tuig nga maayong pagdumala, kalambuan sa ekonomiya, o 6 ka tuig nga pagkaylap sa korupsyon, mas taas nga datos sa kawalay trabaho ug pagsamot sa kalisod. Protektahi ang imong kaugmaon pinaagi sa dili pagbaligya sa imong boto. Hinumdumi, ayaw kahadlok sa pagboto o pagboto nga maalamon.
Painit ng painit ang nalalapit na eleksyon. Pero hindi dapat kalimutan na tayo ay nasa gitna pa ng pandemya at may mga nagsusulputang variants ng COVID-19 na posibleng mas malala. Pakikipagkamay, beso-beso, selfies, may mahigpit na paalala si Commission on Election spokesman James Jimenez.
Well, napakahalaga kasi na panatiliin nating ang seguridad ng ating mga mamamayan. Alam naman natin na during the campaign period, talagang ang posibleng tamaan ng COVID, dahil dito nga sa ongoing na pandemic natin, ay hindi naman yung mga kandidato o yung kanilang mga campaign staff, kundi yung mga taong nag-a-attend sa kanilang mga rally. Kaya napakahalaga na pangalagaan natin ang kanilang kalusugan. And this responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the candidates and their campaign teams.
Narito ang mga panuntunang itinakda ng COMELEC sa ilalim ng Resolution number 10732 kung paano matitiyak na ang mga campaign activities para sa May 9, 2022 na eleksyon ay hindi maging COVID super spreader events. Lahat ng kandidato at kanilang mga campaign support staff ay itinuturing na authorized persons outside of residence or APOR kahit ano paman ang alert level system at kanilang vaccination status. Ang face-to-face sorties, rallies, conventions, motorcades, caravans at meeting de avance ay pinapayagan lamang sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng alert levels 1, 2 at 3. Ang mga batang maedad 17 pababa at mga nakatatandang maedad 66 pataas at ang may mga kondisyong medikal, kabilang na ang mga buntis, ay bawal dumalo sa mga ganitong aktibidad.
At huwag nating kakalimutan yung mga selfie, mga pagkamay-kamay, pagyakap-yakap, beso-beso. Saglit lang yan. No? Wala pang ilang segundo yan, tapos na yan, lumipas na. Pero pag kayo ay nagkasakit dahil dyan, pag kayo ay nagka-COVID, mahabang gamutan yan, mahabang bubunuin ng inyong kalusugan yan. At hindi lang yan, pati ng inyong finances. Napakamahal magkasakit ngayon. So, wag nating isasang-alang sa kakunting enjoyment yung mas mahabang problema ng COVID.
Ang indoor campaign ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 4. Mga outdoor na aktibidad lamang na nasa 30% capacity ang pinapayagan. Kahit na anong meeting, convention, rally, motorcade, caravan o meeting de avance ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 5. Ang mga kandidato o ang kanilang mga campaign support staff ay pinagbabawalang gawin ang mga sumusunod. Huwag pumasok sa pribadong pamamahay habang nagsasagawa ng house-to-house campaign kahit pa pumayag ang may-ari ng bahay. Bawal ang pakipagkamay, pagyakap, beso-beso o kahit na anong physical contact sa kandidato o mga kasama nila at sa publiko. Bawal ang makipag-selfie o pagkuha ng litrato na lalabag sa social distancing protocols. Bawal mamahagi ng pagkain o inumin upang maiwasang magtanggal ng face mask ang mga tao.
Ang ating kalusugan at kasiguruhan sa panahon ng pandemya ay nakasalalay sa individual na pananagutan or individual responsibility. Kailangan tayo maging responsible tayo sa sarili nating mga gawa. Kung tayo ay magbe-behave in a safe manner, magiging safe tayo lahat. Kung tayo mismo ang lalabag sa mga protocols na itinakda ng ating health authorities, talagang tataas ang tsansa ng infection, no, in our population. So, kailangan doon sa mga botante, doon sa mga nanonood ng mga rally, kayo mismo, magkusa kayo na huwag ninyong gagawin yan.
Tandaan, ang paglabag sa mga health protocols sa mga aktibidad na may kinalaman sa eleksyon ay itinuturing na election offense. Ang mga lalabag sa panuntunang itinakda ay nahaharap sa hanggang 6 na taong pagkabilanggo at multa na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Maaari ding mawala ang karapatang bumoto pag ikaw ay nahatulang guilty sa paglabag sa mga protocols. Tunay na mahirap ang pangangampanya para sa eleksyon, pero sa gitna ng patuloy na public health crisis, ito ay higit pang naging masalimuot. Ang mga kandidato, ang kanilang campaign staff at ang publiko ay marapat na piliin lagi ang kaligtasan at kalusugan una sa lahat. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Kung ikaw ay nakakita ng aktibidad na lumalabag sa mga naturang panuntunan sa iyong lugar, huwag mag-atubiling magsumbong sa COMELEC sa kanilang Facebook, Twitter at mobile. Kada eleksyon, pumipili ang sambayanang Pilipino ng susunod na lider ng bansa, ng taong magtatakda ng plano at polisiya para sa 6 na taon ng ating kinabukasan. Pero ano nga ba ang hinahanap natin sa isang leader? Sa anong mga kwalifikasyon natin titimbangin ang mga kandidatong nanliligaw para sa matamis nating boto?
Dapat ang leader natin matapang, walang uurungan. Oo nga.
Ang gusto kong kandidato ay yung magaling sumayaw at entertaining.
Gusto ko yung matikas, yung magaling magdala ng sarili.
Sana yung susunod na presidente mayaman na para hindi na mangurakot.
Alam mo bang base sa ating konstitusyon, 5 lang ang kwalifikasyon para sa mga nagnanais tumakbong presidente ng Pilipinas? Una, kailangan natural-born citizen ng Pilipinas. Ikalawa, kailangang rehistradong botante. Ikatlo, marunong bumasa at magsulat. Ika-4, nasa edad na 40 sa araw ng eleksyon. At ika-5, residente ng Pilipinas sa loob ng 10 taon bago ang eleksyon. Simple, hindi ba? Walang itinatakdang kwalifikasyon base sa edukasyon, work experience o kayamanan. Pero simple nga bang tunay ang mga dapat nating hanapin sa susunod na leader ng ating bansa? Ayon kay Commission on Elections spokesperson James Jimenez, marami pa tayong pwede at dapat hanapin.
Very basic o payak ang ating requirements. Ibig pa sabihin nito na yan lang ang kailangan nating hanapin? Siyempre hindi. Yan ang tinatawag nating minimum. Pwede kang maghanap ng mas lampas pa dyan. No? Halimbawa, maghanap ka ng taong merong integridad. Gawin mong necessary ingredient yan. Gawin mong kalakip yan ng pagpili mo kung sino magiging pangulo. Kailangan may integridad, kailangan may kakayanan, kailangan magaling, kailangan matalino, at kailangan nagsasabi ng katotohanan sa bayan. Kasi ang pipiliin natin ay hindi lang basta-bastang tao. Leader natin ang pipiliin natin. Leader natin na bibigyan natin ng napakalaking kapangyarihan. Kapangyarihan over our lives, over our livelihoods, over our country. So, bagaman maliit or payak lamang ang requirements ng konstitusyon, kailangan tayo bilang botante, pag boboto na tayo, kailangan medyo mas mataas naman ang standards natin.
Tunay na marami tayong dapat hanapin na katangian sa susunod na leader ng bayan. Ngayon, higit kailanman, kailangan nating maging mapanuri.
Sa tingin ko bilang botante, kailangan maging mas mapanuri tayo dahil hindi biro ang halalan. Hindi biro ang hinihingi niya sa atin ng mga kandidatong yan. Gusto nila maging leader natin. Gusto nila magkaroon ng kapangyarihan sa ating kabuhayan, sa ating buhay, sa ating bansa. At dahil dyan, kailangan natin maging mapanuri. Kung jowa mo nga lang pinadadaan mo sa butas ng karayom bago mo sagutin, paano pa kaya yung mga elected leaders natin na may tunay na kapangyarihan sa iyo?
Sabi nga ni Director Jimenez, kung kinikilatis nating maigi ang isang potensyal na jowa bago ibigay ang matamis nating oo, mas lalong higit na dapat nating kilatisin ang mga nanliligaw para sa makapangyarihan nating boto.
Hindi pa kami pwedeng bumoto.
Kaya sana pumili kayo ng tama para sa aming kinabukasan.
Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Tatay Ben, Sir Ben. Good afternoon to you and thank you for coordinating this event para po sa mga taga Nueva Ecija. Kami po nagpapasalamat sa lahat. Hindi lang madaming schools in Nueva Ecija. Meron din Quirino, Tatay Ben, and some other places apart from Nueva Ecija who are joining us today. And we thank everyone for taking the time out to be with us today. Ito yung pang-sampu, if I'm not mistaken. Pang-9 pala, sorry. Pang-9 for this year's Scholastic Press Outreach Program namin. And we're bringing it back in Luzon kasi tapos na po kami sa Mindanao tsaka Visayas. Babalikan uli namin yung other areas na hindi pa namin na-cover. And thanks very much, Seidel Foundation, for giving us the opportunity to make this Scholastic Press Outreach Program happen this year. Kasi ito po din sa isang napakahalagang programa ng PPI. Kasi ito sa pang media ay yung apo ni Tatay Ben. Hindi siya pang media pero ito ay para sa kaalyado ng media, meaning we can always consider the academe or the academics as our biggest allies in terms of, a lot of things in journalism, fighting misinformation, all our advocacies on press freedom, excellence, etc., etc. At malaking bagay po na kasama namin kayo kasi hindi pa namin, actually Joyce, wala pa tayong face-to-face sa Nueva Ecija ever. So we're testing the waters, although we're seeing people in small boxes, pero hopefully next year or some other time, we can get to visit Nueva Ecija. Siguro, ayan, andito yung trustee for Luzon namin, si Jonald na based in Batangas. Hopefully, Jonald, makabisita tayo sa Nueva Ecija for our other projects as well. Ayun, dapat po magsimulan natin ating programa with some prayers, All right, let's put ourselves in the presence of God and the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And mighty Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the wonderful opportunity to be with our audience again. Ito po ang serbisyo namin para hindi lang para sa industriya namin pero sa mga sa educators and mga estudyante po na kasama namin sa aming adhikain na ipagpatuloy ang mapagpalayang pamamahayag at ang pagsulong sa isang magandang diskusyon kahit ano pang pag-uusapan namin. Pero ito, Lord, kami po ay naman patay at bigyan pa ng magandang kalusugan at pagpatuloy po ang aming magandang adhikain para sa aming bansa. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good afternoon uli. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat again kay Tatay Ben, kay Sir Ben Domingo, thank you. Ayan si Tatay Ben. Pag-coordinate po sa aming event ngayon. Wala po kaming partner school pero sabihin na natin, Joyce, marami tayong partner schools. Kasi ang dami na nila ngayon dito. Sabi nga ni Tatay Ben nung isang sa gabi ba yun? Nang in-update niya ako, hindi lang from Nueva Ecija, meron taga Quirino din. And those who cannot attend the Zoom meeting, they are also watching us live on FB. Kaway-kaway sa kanila. Ayun. You can still engage in the conversations mamaya po. So please participate in the open forum. You can, key in your questions para sa ating mga speakers. Ayun. Thanks very much, Seidel Foundation, for supporting us. Having said that, I'd like to call the resident representative of Seidel Foundation on behalf of the resident representative of Seidel Foundation. She's one of the project directors of Seidel Foundation, Caroline Lee, and after that, we will call our trustee for Luzon, Jonald Rayos.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Ariel. Good afternoon to all of you, to all our participants today. Everybody from Nueva Ecija. I understand from Isabela, Quirino, Ilocos Norte, and Nueva Ecija, right? So good afternoon also to our PPI trustee for Luzon, Mr. Jonald Rayos, and I understand Sir Ben Domingo, who played a huge role in helping to make this work. Thank you very much. This is such an important activity to reach out to the academe our educators, and of course the students. And of course, the Seidel Foundation is very, very happy to be able to work with the Philippine Press Institute on this series. And it's going to be ongoing. I understand, Ariel, you'll be adding more. You're looking to add more to the series. Yes, please, let's do that. And our resident representative, he is in a meeting today. He would have loved to join and meet those whom he have not met yet in this very hardworking team working on this series. He sends his regards. Now, just a few words about the Seidel Foundation. It is a German non-government organization based in Germany, and we have been active, involved in various development projects in the Philippines for more than 40 years now. And this has been a really astounding, this cooperation, this partnership with the Philippine Press Institute. Ever since we started, we have run practically, I think it would be more than 100 activities already in total, like in total in these years, right, Ariel?
Correct.
So, and these have been geared towards so many different sectors, helping, of course, the journalists, but also the civil society, the students. So today you'll be hearing more about Midya, and the title of our activity is Midya at Pandemya. It mentions also the pandemic, which is still trying to stay with us, but more importantly, of course, it's about how the media is coping with and covering the health crisis. And related to that is how overall the challenge of a lot of news that could be or be not true, may or may not be true, is being addressed by the media. Of course, you'll hear about, from the presentations of our speakers, about some examples of what manipulations can be done for our students, our participants today. You'll get to see that, but more importantly, you will get to be equipped with tools, with tips on how to discern, how to check, how to do fact checking on your own, so that you develop, you hone your discernment in consuming media, because nowadays we have moved over into the cyberspace. Information is everywhere. Attention is really super in demand. Everything is depending your attention. So you really, it would really be helpful for you to develop that and make use of those tips and tools to help guide you and navigate this cyber world of information. So with that, I wish you a very fruitful and engaging discussion this afternoon. And once again, thank you everyone, and thanks of course to the PPI team. And
Thanks,
of course,
Carol.
with Joyce Panares.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, HSF. Please do not forget to visit or like the page of Seidel Foundation for more information on their activities, and also the page of PPI for more details on our programs. At this point, I'd like to call our trustee for Luzon, who is also publisher of an award-winning community newspaper in Batangas. Please welcome Mr. Jonald Rayos. Good afternoon, Jonald.
Yes, good afternoon, Ariel. At sa ating lahat ng mga taga-panood o sa ating mga participants ngayong hapon. Isang napakagandang pagkakataon ito na patuloy nating inihahatid sa tulong ng Seidel Foundation ang ganitong klase ng panayam. Hindi lamang sa mga kasamahan natin sa media, kundi higit sa lahat sa ating mga kabataan sa pamamagitan ng ating mga partner schools. At nakakatuwa naman na sa pagkakataong ito patuloy ang pakikipag-ugnayan sa atin ng iba't ibang mga pamantasan, iba't ibang mga paaralan at kolehiyo sa kapuluan para makasama natin na maihatid ang tamang impormasyon hindi lamang sa panahong ito ng eleksyon, kundi sa panahong ito ng pandemya. Sa kabuuan, isang napakalaking challenge sa ating lahat na kung paano ihahatid ang tamang impormasyon sa ating mga kababayan. At naririto rin yung pagkakataon na tayo ay nahaharap sa isang hamon ng ating pakikipaglaban sa tama na impormasyon na dapat nating maihatid. Ngayon, sa pagkakataong ito, na ang ating mga kapatid sa media ay nahirapan o nahirapang magkaroon ng mga coverages sa panahon ng pandemya, isang mahalagang pagkakataon na katuwang natin dito ang ating mga kabataan, ang ating mga nasa sa paaralan, sapagkat sila ang higit na makatutulong sa kanilang mga komunidad. Kung paano bubuo ng tamang impormasyon, paano tutulungan ang ating mga kababayan na makabuo ng tamang opinyon, samantalang tayo nahaharap sa isang panahon ng pagdidesisyon para sa susunod naman na 6 na taon. Kaya ang ating pasasalamat sa Seidel Foundation sa patuloy na pakikipagtuwang sa Philippine Press Institute, ganun din sa mga paaralan na ating nakakatuwang sa gawain na ito. Kaya sa ating mga kababayan, sa ating mga participants sa hapong ito, mabuhay at sana ma-enjoy ninyo ang lahat ng mga panayam na ihatid ng ating panel of speakers. Magandang hapon.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Rayos. Also, very inspiring introductory remarks there, and also for setting the tone of the seminar workshop. Right, Joyce? Ngayon, bago ko ilipat yung floor or microphone kay Joyce, the PPI has been doing Scholastic Press Outreach Program for so many years, at nag-iiba po yung tema every year, at yun naangkop and very significant ang gagawing tema ng PPI. Unlike last year, it was about information literacy, democracy resilience. Ito ay hindi naman din nalalayo doon sa tema na ngayon, yung tema nung last year. Kasi pag-uusapan pa rin natin yung media. But this time, we're looking into media conditions in the time of the pandemic. At importante po na I think not only appreciate, but also find ways to support journalism in this country, or your journalists in your areas. Kung hindi po kayo nagbabasa ng mga dyaryo ninyo sa mga communities niyo, it's about to check on your community newspapers kung meron man, and also check on your journalists kung sa inyo po sila, kung paano sila ngayong pandemya nito. Importante po matugunan natin yung pangailangan. It's not as if hindi natin alam kung pangailangan, but more pronounced is here as we talk about difficulties and challenges they're facing in this unprecedented times. Sama-sama po tayong hindi lang magtulungan para tugunan yung kung ano man yung realidad, pero sama-sama nating pag-uusapan dahil kayo po ay involved sa aming industriya. At laging sinasabi nga ni Sir Ben, pag nagtuturo sila, they are actually educators actually molding the next generation of content providers, media, or journalists. So nararapat po na dito ka, and we welcome you and we thank you for joining us today. Ayun, hindi na natin patatagalin pa kasi marami po tayong pag-uusapan. It's going to be an exciting discussion with our resource persons, but we just welcome PPI Seminar Director, also News Editor of Manila Standard, Ms. Joyce Pañares. Good afternoon, Joyce.
Hi, Ariel. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Carol. The PPI team, kay Sir Ben, magandang hapon po. At sa lahat po ng participants natin today, sa loob ng Zoom room natin, we have, I think, at least 149 and counting.
Yeah.
Taas pa po yung numbers natin. And we also have students as well as members of the academe and actually representatives from DepEd who are present with us today. Nanonood din po sila sa ating Facebook live stream. And baka meron din sa ating YouTube. Maraming salamat. Isang mainit na pagbati matapos ang manakanakang pag-ulan kahapon. I don't know kung naramdaman ninyo, but a lot of people were complaining na nawalan yata ng kuryente after biglang bumuhos yung ulan. Officially back in Makati now, Ariel, after very quick takas to Tagaytay. Anyway, bago natin tawagin yung ating unang speaker, siguro a bit of context lang why we are focusing on media and the pandemic. Sabi nila sa mga studies, 2 okasyon daw ang talagang pinaka tumataas ang bilang at scope at lalim siguro ng disinformation at misinformation. Una, pag may crisis, which is what we have right now with the pandemic. At ikalawa ay pag-eleksyon, which is also what we're having in 3 weeks' time. So talaga naman, actually, ang description nga ng PPI is it's an election like no other. This will be the first time that we will have polling precincts na merong separate isolation presinto para sa mga may COVID symptoms. This will be the first time that COVID patients, meaning by May 9 kung positive, hindi po pwedeng bumoto. Unfortunately, hindi pwedeng palabasin ng isolation facilities. This is the first time that we are experiencing really a wave of hindi naman first time, pero iba talaga yung level siguro ng misinformation, disinformation. Tapos from our first speaker, makikita ninyo kung paano media mismo had to pivot, had to cope with the pandemic. At kami mismo sa hanay namin ay tinamaan, naapektuhan. Ano ba yung mga challenges that were faced by the media? At in fact, may mga ilan dyan na hindi lang, yung iba unfortunately talaga nagsara, yung iba just went digital, yung iba ay nagbawas ng staff nila. Now we are alert level 1, so medyo bumabalik yung sense of normalcy. But you can never be sure because even DOH is saying baka after elections, pumalo ulit ang cases natin. So with that said, I hope, I just ask our students, our participants, please, if you have questions for our first 2 speakers, either put them sa chat box or raise your hand and I will call you later sa ating Q&A. We will have 2 sessions of Q&A. So without further ado, our first speaker is the Vice President of JSAP and the Journalism Program Head of the University of Santo Tomas. I would like to call Professor Felipe Salvosa II to present Reporting in the Time of the New Normal, Journalism Amid the COVID-19 Pandemic. Prof. Ipe, good afternoon.
Magandang hapon. I hope you can hear me clearly, no?
Yes, very clear.
Very clear.
Loud and clear.
So, salamat for the introduction, Miss Joyce. At ngayong hapon, ako ay naatasan na to somewhat set the tone for the whole event, no? So, maraming salamat sa Philippine Press Institute at sa Seidel Foundation for giving me the opportunity to share yung aming mumunting research project, no? So let me share my screen. So ang title ho ng aking maiksing presentation today is Reporting in the Time of New Normal, Journalism Amid the COVID-19 Pandemic, no? Ito po ay isang saliksik na bahagi ng isang global network ng mga journalism educators at researchers na pinag-aaralan yung elemento or yung variable na risk, no, sa trabaho ng mga mamamahayag, no. So we are a network of more than 60 researchers from 8 regions, no. So we are educators, we are also practitioners, no, and we want to investigate, no, the news reporting of globalized crisis issues, no. So we want to inspire collaborative projects transcending national boundaries. We want to open up spaces for dialogue and debate on how to improve the quality of journalism in the public interest within today's dimensions of globalized digital ecosystems. So the network is headed by an academic based at the University of Melbourne in Australia, si Dr. Ingrid Volkmer. She's the director of the International Digital Policy Lab, also based in Australia. If you want to visit our site, it's at globalriskjournalismhub.com. Now, I would like to thank the head of our regional group within the Global Risk Journalism Hub, Dr. Sarah Chinasamy, a Malaysian communication scholar, for allowing us to share the regional results to our audience today. So, yung aming regional group within the hub is composed of researchers from Malaysia, of course, and then sa Pilipinas, no, meron tayong dalawang members, myself and Mr. Christian Esguerra, also of UST. We also have members from India, Nepal, as well as Thailand. So, yung Yung aming research, no, is actually a two-track study, no. So we carried out a snapshot survey in Q1 of last year to sort of gather baseline data, no, on working conditions of journalists amid the pandemic. And then for this year, we proceeded with qualitative interviews. So we began to do in-depth interviews with journalists, ask them questions, no, about their perceptions of the pandemic and the working conditions in their own news organizations and the industry as a whole. So let me share with you the results of the snapshot survey that we completed last year, and we are going to publish as a hub, no, very soon. Ito ay isang online survey, no, na isinagawa noong isang taon, at ang resulta na ipapakita ko ay for the region, although we will also of course highlight the Philippine results, no. Maganda nito, we will be able to put the Philippine results in the context of regional, and global results, no. So doon sa nabanggit ko na snapshot survey, anong mga naging objectives nito? We wanted to look at the challenges faced by journalists in covering the pandemic. The Global Risk Journalism Hub was also interested on the role of disinformation amid the pandemic, no? And then journalist sources of information about COVID-19 and whether journalists faced pressures in covering the pandemic. Okay. So the respondents from the Southeast Asia region, no, nagkaroon kami ng 175 respondents. Out of that, 32 came from the Philippines, no? And this total 175 respondents is about a quarter of the global respondents of 744. So yung aming regional sample, 175, is 63% male and 37% female, no? I think this is because of the overwhelmingly male sample, no, that was drawn from India, no. So nga pala, so this is purposive, no, kaya hindi tayo masyadong nag-generalize dito because the sampling is purposive, no, hindi siya random sample. But what we wanted to do to obtain here are the insights, no, from the journalists. Okay, so ang aming mga respondents dito sa online survey, dito sa snapshot survey, karamihan sa kanila covering national beats, no, or national issues or national stories, and then followed by local or regional stories, no, or coverage assignments. We also asked them where the majority of their work was being published or aired, no. Dito sa ating pie chart, makikita natin na 41%, no, are publishing in internet, online, digital platforms, no, including web portals, aggregators, blogs, websites, and social media. Pero pag pinagsama-sama mo yung mga legacy media like television, print, and radio, no, mas malaki pa rin sila, no, yung legacy media. But the single biggest would be the online, internet, and digital platforms. In our sample, more than half were reporters, no. 52% were journalists and reporters, a fifth were editors, no, and some were in management or other roles. Very knowledgeable about COVID ang ating sample because 9 out of 10 reported that they wrote stories about COVID. Okay, we asked them whether they felt the COVID-19 coverage was challenging overall. This seems to be an obvious, the answer seems to be obvious here, no? But we thought that it needed to be asked. No? And 8 out of 10 either agreed or strongly agreed with this statement that the reporting assignments were challenging overall. Okay, nearly 7 out of 10 reported that they felt personally exposed to COVID-19 in the course of their work. No, we are combining here the strongly agree and agree responses. So 7 out of 10 felt exposed to COVID. Okay. And somewhat similar proportion said that they had at least one colleague who contracted COVID. No, 76% said yes, no, to that question. Tinanong namin kung sila ba ay binigyan ng protective gear ng kanilang mga employers, no, o kaya client kung sila ay freelancer. At ang sumagot dito, 47% ang nagsabi na binigyan sila ng protective gear. 47%. No? Ito yung mga agree and strongly agree responses. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, hindi lahat, no? Hindi lahat ng mga mamamahayag na aming na-survey ay nabigyan ng protective gear nung panahon na sila ay na-survey. Okay, as I said earlier, the hub is very interested in the dynamics, no, of disinformation and COVID coverage. No, tinanong namin yung respondents whether they had a good understanding of what this information is, and 9 out of 10 answered that they strongly agreed or agreed with that statement. So mataas ang kanilang understanding of what this information is. No? Okay. We also asked them if their media organizations have guidelines on how to identify disinformation, and 6 out of 10 said they either agreed or strongly agreed with that statement. Okay. And more than half have received training on handling information. So ang tanong is, I have received training on how to handle this information. Ang sagot, 24% strongly agree, 33% agree. No? Now, we asked them if they felt that this information was affecting how they were covering the pandemic. Okay? And we combined the agree and strongly agree answers at lumabas dito na the perceptions, no, of this information affecting pandemic coverage was more pronounced in the Philippines and Thailand. No? And this is something that we would like to validate in the qualitative phase of our study. Okay. Yung iba, mas mababa na proportion. Ano? So Philippines, 88%, Thailand, 82%. Malaysia also reported a high figure, 77%. No? Marami ring issues of misinformation, disinformation sa Malaysia. Now, only 17%, no? Only 17% of our respondents said that their organizations have been associated with this information, perhaps because of the presence of guidelines against disinformation and training. Okay, ito na, papasok na tayo dun sa part ng sources of information. Ano? We found a heavy dependence of journalists on the government for information. Ano? Alam naman natin to because lahat ng mga news conferences, no, if either from the national government or from
may katiwan bang December?
Okay. So but we wanted to see, no, yung responses ng ating mga snapshot survey respondents, at nakita natin na this is very much pronounced in the Philippines. So 91%, 9 out of 10 of our respondents, no, there's a similar proportion of response in India, 87%, no, and then Malaysia, 8 out of 10. Okay. Thailand, 7 out of 10. Globally, 75% of respondents said that, you know, they heavily depended on the government for information. You know, meron itong implication, ano, doon sa kind of information that is being passed on to the public. Okay, we asked them the question. We asked them to agree or disagree. Now, rate their agreement, rather, on this statement. I have not been restricted from covering any aspect of the pandemic. No? And this chart shows the combination, the responses, no, of our respondents. And sa bandang kaliwa, we are summarizing the disagree and strongly disagree answers. At lumabas dito na smaller non-majority, no, proportion of journalists who said that they experienced restrictions, no. In the Philippines, 34%, no. 34% of the respondents said they disagreed or strongly disagreed with this statement. Meaning to say they experienced restrictions, no. Alam naman natin maraming naging restrictions nung pandemic, no. So nung nagsimula ang pandemic, sumubok mag-impose ng accreditation requirements, no, ang national government through the PCOO, and then there were mobility restrictions, and then later on may mga testing requirements, no, and then vaccination requirements, no. Okay, we asked them whether they relied, no, on information from health experts and the WHO in particular, no, and we found that trust in health experts was very high, no, 9 out of 10, no, for health experts and 7 out of 10 for the WHO, no. So kami naman we take caution, not to interpret too much yung differences between these proportions kasi wala tong margin of error, no. And we cannot make a conclusion that these two responses are different. But what we can say is this is a high response, no. That in general, trust in experts was very high. There was also a high dependence on press releases, no. 77% as compared with social media, 49% lang, and scientific journals 52%, no. Perhaps we can attribute this to the need to verify what you get from social media, and perhaps also the inaccessibility, no, or the cost involved, no, or the time needed to get information from scientific journals. May tiwala rin sa international media, no, ang ating mga journalists, and then many of them said that they also got information from the international media, no, 72%. Okay. Tinanong namin ang mga mamamahayag doon sa aming snapshot survey if they interviewed marginalized sources, no, during the pandemic, no. And we saw that in the region at least half, no, did. And we saw this as an attempt to balance the coverage given the fact that most of the information was coming from the government. No? In fact, sa Pilipinas, mataas to 66%. No? And this is, we have yet to do content analysis, but makita natin, no, at the height of the pandemic, marami ring stories involving the hardships of people given the mobility restrictions, no, economic difficulties, layoffs, no, lack of jobs, no, and this was covered in the news media. Okay, we asked them the question whether they have experienced pressure to publish information about the pandemic, no, from the government, no. Sa Pilipinas, the overwhelming response was no, 84%, no. Pero meron ding sumagot ng yes, 13%. And makikita natin na iba-iba yung sagot, no, sa mga bansa, sa magkakaibang bansa. Sa Malaysia, 45% said no, 45% said yes, no. In Thailand, parang kagaya ng Pilipinas, no, 73% no, 14% yes. So it looks like in different governments, no, it work in different ways, no. So merong subset of journalists who are receiving some pressure, meron namang iba who have been given wider latitude than the others. Okay, one of the significant findings of the snapshot survey was that many journalists feared, no, that their organization would be experiencing financial difficulties because of the pandemic. No, 6 out of 10 ito sa region and even globally 6 out of 10. No, but we found that the fear of financial difficulties was strongest in the Philippines at 81%. No, 81% of our Filipino respondents either agreed or strongly agreed with the statement that there could be financial difficulties because of the pandemic. No, followed by Thailand and India and Nepal. So what have we found, no, in the course of this snapshot survey? No, we found that most journalists viewed COVID-19 coverage as challenging, as they felt exposed to the pandemic and knew at least one colleague who was infected. Only 47% said they were given protective gear. No, we also found a high understanding of what this information is. No, and that most journalists believed this information was affecting news coverage, although their organizations were not likely associated with spreading information. We found a very high dependence on government information and press releases, but high trust in health experts and the WHO. We also found that majority of journalists tried to balance coverage by interviewing marginalized sources, and we found that this proportion was higher in the Philippines than in other countries in our region. Okay, we found some evidence of government pressure in some countries, no, and we also found that majority of journalists feared that their news organizations would experience financial difficulties because of the pandemic. Now, for the second track of our study, no, ito na nga yung qualitative interviews. Now, this is ongoing. The goal is to interview 30 journalists, no, reporting on the COVID-19 pandemic from different platforms. No, so we've been interviewing journalists by phone, by Zoom, or by Google Meet. No, in selecting our respondents, we took into consideration, no, the experiences of journalists, reporters, editors, emerging news professionals, and new news actors. No, again, purposive yung sampling. We will deliberately select news professionals, no, to gain insights into their expert knowledge. No? And then there was an interview guide developed by the Global Risk Journalism Hub, which was recommended to be used to all members who are conducting the qualitative interviews. No? So we are following a two-step process in selecting interviewees. No? First, we listed the key news outlets in what we call the crisis public ecology, meaning to say the news organizations or players delivering COVID crisis news in the country. Next, we identified representatives of these news outlets. No? So in drawing up the list of key news outlets, we endeavored to ensure geographical representation, no? Meaning to say dapat mga geographic regions represented, not just Metro Manila. So we also drew respondents from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and across platforms, no? Print, online, TV, radio. So in this regard, PPI really helped, no, in connecting us with its membership, no, throughout the country, especially the community journalists, no, which were heavily affected by the pandemic. Okay, in selecting representatives of news outlets, no, in stage 2, we will also endeavor to ensure gender representation. Okay? So ang gagawin namin dito ay thematic analysis. Now we would like to see patterns within the data, which is the transcribed interviews, no? And then that will be the basis, no? Yung themes will be the basis of the narrative of the entire report. So I'm happy to share with you some of the initial responses from our qualitative interviews, no? So we asked them, our qualitative interview respondents, no, about their perception of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I can say na there was an overwhelming majority of reporters, journalists, editors na negative ang kanilang perception of the government response, no? They agree with the statement na poor ang government response, no, to the pandemic, no. We asked them about what were the key issues, di ba? So they again, an overwhelming majority thought that the economic difficulties were the biggest issue of the pandemic, no? Economic difficulties due to mobility restrictions, no? Sumunod yung vaccination rollout, no? Vaccination rollout, which they thought was slow, no? And then they also, many of them talked about the difficulties, no, of doing stories or interacting with people, sources rather, because press conferences have become mostly virtual, no. And there were costs, no, at least in the initial part of the year, the cost, no, involved in doing fieldwork, because the prohibitive cost of RT-PCR testing tended to discourage journalists, especially if hindi ito sagot ng company, no. So nakita natin na mas maraming mas dehado yung mga print media or community papers na hindi ganon karami ang resources compared with the big TV or tri-media multi-platform networks, no, who are able to pay for the RT-PCR testing of journalists, no, and other costs associated with doing fieldwork. Tinanong namin if their work has become more global or they have had more global interactions, international sources, or because of the pandemic. And well, many of our respondents said that coverage was mostly focused on local angles because of the audience, no? But the subject matter touched on global issues when it came to vaccine rollout, no? And I think one of them also mentioned yung ivermectin, no? Because there were also, this is also an issue in other countries, no? Dubious medical preparations are being recommended by some as a cure for COVID, even without the endorsement of the DOH or WHO. We also found, we confirmed na yung heavy dependence on government sources. The journalists told us na parang wala talaga silang choice kundi to report the official pronouncements, you know, because that was all there was to report. Okay, we asked them what kind of research they were doing, no, during their COVID-19 coverage. Karamihan, yung kanilang research mostly confined to doing Google searches, okay, and going to official websites, no, of the DOH and other government agencies. Our respondents thought that there was a high level of misinformation, especially regarding vaccines. No, this was a prevalent theme of many stories about the pandemic. Okay, on sources, no, we found that there was more trust on health experts than on politicians, political appointees, and military people overseeing the response. No, syempre, they said that they still needed to listen to cabinet officials, no, or task force officials as regards official announcements, no. But when it comes to health experts, no, merong somewhat a blanket trust, no. So kumbaga sa supermarket checkout, no, mabilis yung pila, mabilis makakabayad, no. O kaya kung sa airport, no, green lane, makakadaan agad, okay? Kasi nga these are experts who know their stuff compared with politicians and political appointees who they said, no, were also concerned with public perception on the government's COVID-19 response. Okay? We also asked them ano yung mga naging potential risks on their part, no, because of the pandemic. Marami nagsasabi sa amin na the workload has become heavier because of the multitude, no, of Zoom coverages, no, virtual coverages, and I detect somewhat that newsrooms seem to be compensating, no, for the lack of field work, no, by and simply farming out these Zoom news coverages to journalists, no, who are forced to write stories about them, no. And workload has become heavier as a result. No? There was a fear of going out to cover and bring COVID-19 home, no? Yung isang mga risk na nakita nila, no? And then journalists have become used to working from home, but they were still willing to go out for major coverage. We also found these differences, no, between journalists based in the city and based in the province. No? So I think si Rides, no, who will be talking to us later today, will be able to share more insights about this. In fact, si Rides was one of our respondents. No? So overall, I can say na Filipino journalists have become very resilient and adaptive to the situation, no, and committed to their role, no, as purveyors of information. Tinanong namin sila, what did you think was the role of the journalist in the COVID-19 pandemic? Tagapaghatid ng impormasyon sa publiko, no? Yun ang naging role na nakita nila. Parang somewhat, no, although syempre I still have to validate this, I still have to complete our interviews, but ang sense ko is parang somewhat naisantabi yung watchdog function. Although nandun pa rin, pero focus talaga dun sa paghatid ng kumpirmadong impormasyon para sa publiko na makaiwas sa sakit at risk na dulot ng COVID-19. Titigil muna ako dito, no, to give way to our next speaker, and I hope to interact with you later on in our Q&A portion. Salamat po.
Yay!
Thank you, Prof. Ipe. Para dun sa mga participants natin na siguro campus journalist, huwag kayong mawalan ng pag-asa kung medyo, how do you say it? Hindi naman sa depressing, pero challenging yung situation natin. Challenging naman siya noon pa. Even before the pandemic, dumagdag lang yung pressure ng pandemic sa atin. But as Prof. Ipe said nga, parang nasa kasaysayan na ng journalism in the Philippines na kapag may common enemy or kapag may pressing challenge sa atin, the journalists really rise to the occasion. Kung mapapansin ninyo, siguro imbis na yung takeaway natin doon ay naku, depressing, konti ang tulong, may financial constraints, etc. Baka dapat tingnan natin siya na tipong despite all those challenges, the journalists still did their jobs and delivered, diba? Sabi nga ni Prof, parang yung part ng investigative or watchdog aspect, hindi naman sa nag-take ng backseat, pero talagang ang priority was to be explanatory, to let people understand, because there was so much confusion. Lalo nung the first few months, oh my God, diba, what was COVID-19? What is this new virus that is besetting all of us? And to further give you a perspective from the community, from a community journalist, we have with us Ms. Rides Barsha. She's a Luzon-based community journalist from Bicol, and she will be discussing community media challenges through a journalist lens. Hi, Rides.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Wait.
Screen share.
Nag-try pa siya Ayan na.
Okay
Kasi
na?
naman red lipstick, yes.
Naka-lipstick si Rides.
Naka-lipstick ako ngayon. Ay, pink siya, pink.
Pink pala yan.
Sorry. May culpa, our bad.
Ayan. Okay na po. Nakita na yung aking presentation.
Yes. Okay na.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon sa lahat po na nandito sa Zoom. Thank you for this opportunity sa PPI, sa Hans and Seidel for the opportunity. Salamat po sa tiwala. Okay. Ouch. Okay, I'd like to share from my end sa perspective po ng mga community journalists, yung mga napagdaanan po ng mga mamahayag sa lokal, sa countryside, kung ano yung mga experiences we went through during the hardest lockdown, and hanggang ngayon sa countryside. Okay, I'm going to discuss yung challenges ng mga mamahayag sa Bicol, yung impact ng pagsara ng ABS-CBN and other local radio station, the Sagit News FM, kung ano yung impact sa mamahayag na meron ng pandemya, merong disaster, and yet merong mga kasamahan na nawalan ng trabaho at nalagasan kami ng mga katuwang sa pamamahayag para makapagpaabot sa publiko ng tamang mga balita. Going beyond the comfort zone, ito yung pinakamahirap na naranasan ng mga community journalists, lalo na sa malalayong lugar, covering the area during the hardest lockdown and side by side with the natural disaster events. Then coping with the new normal through virtual or hybrid coverage side by side with the sa grassroots. So our journalists, okay. So what are the challenges we encountered during the hardest lockdown of pandemic and side by side with the occurrence of natural calamities, the typhoons, series of typhoons, the earthquake in Masbate, and the flash floods, yung remobilization ng mga volcanic debris na that causes ng major disaster in Albay. But before that, yung pinakamahirap po talaga na naranasan namin during the hardest lockdown is yung kawalan ng public transportation. So ito yung pinakamahirap kasi ang dami mong gustong puntahan na balita para mag-cover pero walang available na transportation. So walang mobility. So ano ba yung ginawa namin just to, lalo ng mga mamahayag sa countryside? So usually we go through, we ask the assistance of our relatives to my vehicles, of our friends, para makapag-cover. So ang nangyari at that time, so nagsama-sama kami sa vehicle para makapunta dun sa area kung kailangan dapat pumunta yung mga journalist para makapag-cover. Kasi ang mahal that time ng transportation at limitado pa. And worst, karamihan that time ng mga tricycle drivers, positive sila sa COVID-19. So yun ang nakakatakot. So expensive yung transportation, yung mga drivers, karamihan is positive sa COVID-19. So yun ang pinaka-worst na encounter namin at the time during the hardest lockdown. So here. So ang linis, di ba? Napakalinis kasi wala kang makikitang public transportation at the time. So kung merong mga tumatakbo sa private vehicle, saka yung mga habal-habal, tapos yung mga tricycle, no jeepneys, no van, so wala lahat. Except yung habal-habal at saka tricycle na napakamahal at the time. So gold talaga yung presyo ng transportation. So mahirap na kasi nga affected ka na ng pandemic. So ang mahal lahat. So what are the fears na nararanasan na encounter ng mga mamamayag sa countryside? Ito, sinabi ko po kanina na fear of yung takot na baka mahawaan ka or makahawa ka ng virus na hindi natin nakikita. So pwedeng makahawa ka sa pamilya mo o sa mga katrabaho mo. O kaya sa komunidad kung saan ka gumagalaw. Lalo karamihan, pumupunta kami sa mga evacuation centers. Though may mga protocols na sinusunod. Pero nakakatakot pa din na baka makahawa ka or ikaw yung mahawaan. So another thing is no hazard pay. Limited yung financial resources, support from the publication kasi nga apektado lahat ng pandemya, affected lahat ang ekonomiya kaya Ang hirap. So truly the survival of the fittest ang naranasan ng mamamayag. Pero kahit ganun pa man, patuloy pa rin ang paglabas ng media sa pag-cover kasi hindi masyado uso sa countryside yung hindi ka lalabas. You have to go to the area kung nasaan naroon ang balita. Though merong hybrid or merong virtual, pero hindi kami komportable at hindi kontento sa virtual lang. So, you have to go to the grassroots para makita mo yung totoong balita. Yung hindi ka lang kinikwentuhan. So, ikaw mismo ang nakakakita kung ano ang realidad sa labas, sa baba. Ito po yung quarantine area sa Legazpi City. During ng hardest lockdown, ito yung pinaka-busy quarantine area sa Legazpi City kasi Legazpi City is the regional center. So pagbaba ng pasahero sa eroplano, automatic dyan ang proceed sa quarantine area sa Legazpi City. Tapos lahat ng mga kasi that time nagkaroon pa din ng balik probinsya. And at that time, yung balik probinsya ng provincial government, dito rin dinadala yung mga travelers to check kung hindi ba sila nahawa o kaya makahawa sa pamilya. So dito yung quarantine area, the busiest quarantine area so far in Albay province. Ato. Nung kasagsagan po ng quarantine tapos meron pang series of disasters na nangyari sa Bicol, lalo sa Albay and Catanduanes. Kasabay ang pagsara ng ABS-CBN, ng Sagit-Sitnos FM. Dito, nawalan kami ng katuwang kasi kokonti na nga lang yung mamahayag na at yung mainstream na nandiyan gumagalaw na nagtatrabaho sa labas para makapagparating yung balita. Kasi syempre we have to counter the trolls, the fake news. Hindi pwede na mag-rely ka lang sa kasi that time ang sources ng mga information ng mga tao is nasa Facebook. So hindi pwedeng ganun. So kailangan the mainstream media to work thoroughly to report the truth as agent of truth. So we have to go to the farthest area to report kung ano ang nangyayari sa labas. So at that time, 23 na mga 30 na empleyado ng ABS-CBN ang nawalan ng trabaho. And sa Sagit-Sitnos FM, nawalan din sila ang nawalan ng trabaho is almost 20. More than 20. Yun, kalahati nun ang mamahayag. Pero ngayon, they resorted sa online streaming, tapos sa Facebook na lang sila nagpapatuloy ng pamahayag. Here, yung manager ng Sagit-Sitnos FM, until now, he's trying to fight back against, kasi he accused the Ako Bicol, si Congressman Alfredo Garbin behind the closure of Sagit-Sitnos FM kasi June Alegre is currently is a board member hopeful, pero siya yung isa sa mga notable na critic ng Ako Bicol, lalo na ni Congressman Alfredo Garbin, which was accused behind the filing of the case. At ngayon, meron siyang cyber libel case against na final si Congressman Garbin against kay June Alegre. Here, aside from challenges na na-encounter sa countryside, sa kawalan ng transportasyon, lack of financial support. Eto yung siguro problema natin to lahat. Kasi yung internet connectivity masyadong hindi siya stable. Lalo sa Bicol, pag nagkakaroon ng bagyo, automatic yung syempre power failure, tapos yung kawalan ng internet connection. So ito yung pinakamahirap na wala ka lang transportation, wala ka pang internet, wala kang power. So ito yung medyo pinakamahirap under the new normal. But just the same, we have to cope up. Another thing is yung di ba sanay tayo sa coverage na face-to-face, pero because of pandemic, nawala yun, so naging virtual. Pero hindi mo rin makukuha yung pinaka-gist ng story kasi merong cover-up usually pag nagkakaroon ng press con. Pag ang press con na ginagawa mismo ng national government agencies, nagkakaroon ng tawag dito. May mga stories na nawawala ng saysay kasi hindi nila nakakat. So talagang nagkakaroon ng taguan ng data. So ito yung hindi maganda sa hindi face-to-face kasi nga hindi mo nakukuha yung mga documents. Pag hinihingi mo naman, kahit gumawa ka ng letter, so hindi nila binibigay basta-basta. Unlike before, na pre-pandemic,
ako ba o si Rides is having difficulty sa kanyang connection?
Si Ma'am Rides po.
Si Rides na. Rides?
Ng mga data na kailangan mo.
Rides, paulit lang ng last. Oo. Paulit lang ng last
nawalan ako
1 minute siguro.
Nawalan ako ng internet. Okay na?
Now we can hear you, but the last minute or so, baka pwedeng paulit.
Paulit na lang, Rides.
Naririnig niyo na po ako?
Yes.
Now we can hear you. Okay na.
Where are we? Ata yung decode the shift from face-to-face coverage to virtual press conference.
Last two. Tama ba? Joyce, no?
Oo, yan. Parang that one. Yes.
Pandemic radically changed media coverage, coping with the new normal through virtual platforms. Decode and shift from face-to-face coverage to virtual press conferences. So, yun challenges and coping mechanism with the new normal, coverage and poor internet connectivity. So, yun. Okay. There's a virtual press conference. Ito yung na-feel namin more beneficial sa government agencies compared to us na mga mamahayag sa countryside. Bakit? Yun nga yung sabi ko kanina na nagkakataguan ng mga information. Tapos pag nagtatanong ka naman o kaya sinulat mo yung question through pinadala mo lang sa kanila. So pag nakita nila na medyo critical, hindi na nila binabasa. So unless na yung story, yung tanong medyo favorable sa kanila, ayun, mas mabilis sagutin compare sa mga tanong na controversial or medyo critical sa agencies o kaya sa mga news sources. Government officials and agencies usually namimili na lang sila ng mga mamamahayag or outlet na which they consider friendly to them. Pero pag medyo critical ka, hindi ka nila iimbitahin. So yun, so being neutral is not a core principle of journalism. Minsan, lalo ngayon at this moment, kailangan talaga tayong tumayo. We have to take side kung ano yung pinaka maganda para sa bansa at para sa ma-inform natin ang audience natin. So during that hardest lockdown, during the pandemic, ano ba yung na-feel namin? Ako, lahat, yung na-feel namin from the ground is yung we're really striving to get the truth. Yun ang pinakamahirap. Masakit na katotohanan na parang merong tinatago sa mamahayag na hindi dapat mangyari. As agent of truth, we need to report everything outside the box. So kailangan nating makuha lahat ng so yun. So we really striving for the truth at that time. And even until today. So, eto, ano nga ba yung perspective ng mga mamahayag during the pandemic and hanggang ngayon? Pero yung
okay, I think we lost Rides again. We will either we wait for her to come back. Baka mahirap talaga yung connection. Kanina sakto nga she was discussing about internet connection.
Correct.
During the pandemic, tas biglang nawala. Na-lost si Rides. While waiting for her, please, we encourage our students, members of the academy to put your questions sa chat box if you have or comments para po sa ating Q&A later. Kung nawala si Rides, what do we do? We can either proceed to the Q&A while waiting for her to return.
Banggitin niya lang niya yung mga kulang niya during the Q&A.
Ihabol na lang later. I'm sure she's just trying to reconnect. So, Prof. Ipe, ikaw muna, solo flight muna for the Q&A habang inaantay nating makabalik si Rides. Ayan, I'm just trying to check if she's back. Not yet talaga. Prof, siguro simulan natin sa based dun sa initial qualitative na. Kasi di ba nag-start kayo with a quantitative study and then now you're doing the qualitative via one-on-one interviews ang ginagawa, Prof? KII, key informant interviews. Ano yung parang siguro top 3 sentiments na lumalabas sa mga interviewees niyo so far?
Yun nga, no, if I may reiterate, yung heavier workload.
Okay.
No? And they also tie it with mental health, the need to take care of mental health. No? That's recurring theme, no, based on my initial canvas, no, of the key informant interviews, no. Yun yung una. Pangalawa, yung difficulty, no, of engaging with sources, no, because of the virtual setup, no. So medyo it's frustrating for some of them, no, na hindi they couldn't do what they used to, no, like having dinner, lunch, or even coffee with sources, no, para lang makipagkwentuhan. Because that's how we got our stories, di ba?
Yes.
No, hindi yung mga press conferences kasi that's everyone's stories. That's everyone's story.
The press con is the official line. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the official line. But if you want to get your own story, then you have to consult your Rolodex and set up appointments with sources.
Prof, baka wala na nakakaalam ng Rolodex. Medyo dated tayo dyan. We just carbon dated ourselves.
Phone directory, no?
Yeah.
Sino kaya, di ba?
Check your
Tingnan natin yan. Sino ba? Who can I have dinner or lunch with, no? Para lang to get info, not even to do interviews, but just to get tips, no? On what could be big stories. No, that's something that many journalists are missing nowadays, no? Because the coverage has shifted to mostly virtual. Even if the alert levels have gone down, many events continue to be virtual. Okay. And then I think you asked me for three
Yes.
things, no?
Give me 2 pa lang.
Oo. I think prevalent din sa mga journalists na na-interview natin yung I think I would say na yung mga na-interview natin yung mga journalists, medyo negative ang view nila dun sa government response, particularly sa vaccination rollout. Although some of them, nung bandang huli, they do admit na the government somewhat got its bearings, no? But in the initial phase of the pandemic, magulo. And then nag-roll out ng vaccine, ang tagal. No? For them, yan yung mga malalaking issues ng pandemic.
Right, she's back with us.
I'm back. Sorry,
Right. Join us na. We proceeded
ng internet
Sa Q&A.
We proceeded to the Q&A. So join us na in the Q&A, and then kung gusto mong idagdag yung mga naiwang slides later.
Yeah, actually, malapit na din naman siya matapos. Nawalan lang ako ng internet, so on and off siya. So pwedeng i-share ko na rin lang uli yung natitira.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So, eto, tapos na tayo dito. So, yun, yung impact ng pandemic sa mamahayag. Sa countryside, masyadong mabigat kasi nga double whammy yung Albay, yung Bicol dahil sa pandemic and series of disasters na nangyari. Yung sinabi ko nga, yung series of typhoons, earthquake, tapos yung mga floodings, yung mga remobilization ng volcanic materials na kumitil ng mga tao at hanggang ngayon wala pa ding mga bahay yung mga affected ng typhoons 2 years ago. So eto, papakita ko na lang kung ano yung nakita natin sa labas during the coverage in the past. Ito yung mga bata na tumutulong sa fishermen, sa mga magulang nila dahil to augment their resources kasi nga walang source of income, walang bumibili ng kanilang mga produkto dahil walang pumapasok na walang cargo to ship their products. So, yun. So, ito yung through my lens, ito yung nakita ko sa labas kung paano sila nahirapan. Sila yung masyadong nahirapan sa nangyaring pandemya at sa side by side with the impact of disasters. Ayan, yung mga typhoon survivors dito sa Ground Zero sa Tiwi Albay, sa Sugod. Ayan ang yung anihin na sanang palay na sinira din ng typhoon. Ayan, etong pinapakita ko po na to, this is flooding na nag-remobilize yung volcanic materials because of torrential rain. So, yan ang pinakamahirap at the time during ng pandemic, the hardest lockdown kasi nga series of natural disasters yung bumayo sa Bicol region, lalo na sa Albay province. So, ito yung pinakamahirap na hindi mo siya pwedeng hindi puntahan para malaman ng tao, malaman ng gobyerno kung ano ang nangyayari sa baba. So, yun ang pinakamahirap na sinasabi ko po kanina. So, with that, that's maraming salamat. So, ready for Q&A.
Okay, so on that note, we proceed with our Q&A. So kanina si Prof. Ipe was discussing para yung top 3 takeaways in the initial qualitative interviews, ano? And siguro para lang mas makarelate yung mga estudyante natin, can you imagine how difficult it was to be teaching journalism online? Ako sobrang nabaliw ako crafting my my syllabus and adjusting it para maituro ko ang news writing sa isang Zoom setting. Actually, hindi pala Zoom ang gamit sa school. May specific na software that they use. It was so difficult kasi pag sinabi mong journalism, pinalalabas mo yung estudyante mo eh. Diba, hindi naman yan yung tipong as a classroom lang kayo. Papuntahin mo yan sa police station, pakoveran mo ng rally. Diba, dati yung SONA, traditional yan na kinocover ng nag-join 101 kung natapat ka sa first semester. Tapos ngayon, biglang lahat online. Kung sa estudyante nga mahirap, isipin nyo mas lalo sa journalist how frustrating it was for us to be doing the press conference na naka-online tayo. Si Rides was mentioning kanina na napakahirap kasi pwede kang hindi imbitahan. Diba? Hindi pwede dito angas lang. Bigla ka na lang darating dun sa press conference, sasalpak mo yung press ID mong gano'n, pasok ka na. Hindi pwede kasi ito ngayon, kailangan mo ng Zoom link. Pag wala kang Zoom link, wala kang access to the press con. Pwede kang hindi tawagin. Diba? Kahit na ang ganda ng question mo, pwedeng deadmahin nila. And worse, there were instances na hindi ka in-unmute or hindi nag-allow na mag-unmute yung source. So kung sino lang yung gusto nilang questions, yun rin lang yung pwedeng itanong o makapagtanong. So I'm wondering, Rides, yan ba parang yan yung parang isa sa talagang nilabanan ng mga community journalists? Kasi even sa study ni Prof. Ipe, lumalabas na for community journalists, they still really prefer to, boots on the ground. Hindi yung small boxes na set up na ganito.
Yes, actually, yun yung pinaka nilalabanan namin. Ako maraming beses na linabanan ko siya, yung mga national government agencies na meron ako mga tinatanong, sabi natin critical question na I need a response na tsaka kailangan ko ng data. Pero hindi nila ako sinasagot yung question ko. Maraming beses na hindi binabasa. Or kung binabasa naman, kinakat nila yung pinaka part ng critical na question. So, nakakainis siya. So, kailangan mo siyang alabanan talaga. You have to assert your right as mahayag. Kasi pag hindi mo in-assert din, wala. So, magkakaanuhan lang.
Oo, kasi parang yung iba, napagod na sa pag-attempt, no? So hindi na nag-e-effort na magtanong or parang hinahayaan na lang, cover it as is na lang kung paano yung daloy nung press con. Alam mo ba, Prof. I covered just because nag-Marites moment ako noon, hindi naman talaga required, pero Marites ang lola nyo. I covered the Manila Pen press con and it was a face-to-face. Yeah, it was a face-to-face.
Yeah, I saw your photos on Facebook. Yeah.
Oo. And nakakapanibago. Alam mo yun, parang after a long time, suddenly it's face-to-face. Lots of people. Tapos balyahan talaga eh. Dahil nag-ambush interview eh. What can you do? Iba rin. Parang na-miss mo. On one hand, you miss it. And on the other hand, parang teka muna, baka magka-COVID tayo. Baka iuwi natin yung COVID sa bahay. So, grabe rin yung health concerns, di ba? Right? Para sa mga community journalists, paano yun? Parang hindi naman sa hindi sinuportahan, pero medyo kulang yung naging suporta siguro, even among the media organizations. So, walang hazard pay or kung meron man kulang, walang PPI. Kay Prof. Pe, sabi niya kanina, isa sa concern is yung lack of funding for antigen test, di ba? Mahal yun eh. Tapos nung una required siya. So how do journalists cope with all these challenges?
Ako on my part as freelance journal, ICT na provided ako. Lahat ng kailangan ko na protective gears dapat available, dapat nandyan sa akin. To protect myself, to protect my family, and to protect the community. I am with the group. So, pero yung mga other local radio stations naman, nag-provide naman sila ng provided naman sila ng PPE and other yung mga coverage na kailangan ng antigen test or kailangan ng mga kailangan testing. So, yun, provided naman yun.
Prof, dun sa study ninyo, malaking bagay yun, na parang nakaka-discourage sa mga journalists to go out.
Yeah, especially nung una. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, no? If you want to cover an event where the president is attending, talagang kailangan yung testing.
Kailangan yung testing.
Yes, mandatory yun.
Huwag na lang yung cover kung may ganon. Kasi baka hindi sagutin ng company.
Yeah.
Ayun, pag mga ganong klase ng coverage dito sa Bicol, sagot ng company yun.
Actually, ang mas concern ko pa nga dyan, hindi ko alam kung lumabas siya dun sa study, is yung minsan nagre-require sila but they don't tell you ahead. Tapos nabibigla ka, parang feeling ko violation ng privacy mo yun eh. Because everyone will know kung bigla kang positive or negative by virtue of the antigen. Pag hindi ka pinapasok sa coverage, it means nag-positive ka. I've had 2 instances na I went to the event not knowing na there was an antigen. I mean, I wouldn't mind. Okay lang sa akin, di na virgin yung ilong pa, sanay na. Pero sana let me know ahead. Para, di ba, ma-ready mo yung sarili mo. Plus, you go there with full disclosure na this event requires me to do the antigen testing.
Alam mo, Joyce, yung isang na-sense ko din sa mga respondents natin is that despite all of these difficulties, mga challenges, etc., yung the costs involved, personal sacrifices involved, the risks involved, walang nagsabi sa akin na parang wala na akong gana, parang ayoko na dito, parang gusto ko nang lumipat ng trabaho, walang ganon. So, which goes to show the kind of commitment na placed by journalists in this kind of a job, no? And their commitment has been tested by the pandemic.
I may add, yun, tama yung sinabi ni Prof na kasi napaka-challenging ng nangyari sa bansa. So hindi kailangan, the more naging passionate ang mamahayag sa countryside na maging na lumabas, na magtrabaho, na mga pagbalita, kaysa magtago, kaysa doon ka lang sa comfort zone, mas naging passionate pa tayo. Yun ang nakita ko during ng pandemic, tapos nung may bagyo, at diba, ang dami na time na sinasabi yung maraming, mas lalong mahigpit ang protocol at the time sa Bicol dahil nga sa pandemic, tapos may disaster. So, mas lalo siyang mahigpit. Tapos sa rescue, sa lahat ng klase ng coverage that time, mas mahigpit. Lalo na sa mga evacuees din, na mas nakakaawa yung sitwasyon. So, mas nakita ko yung kung gaano ka yung passion ng mamahayag sa labas na makapagbalita para malaman ng tao. Kasi yun lang ang pinaka-source ng tao, lalo sa countryside. Yun lang talaga yung pinaka-source ng tao para sa tamang balita na malaman ng tao kung anong nangyayari sa labas, lalo na they are not allowed to go out, yung nasa evacuation centers. They're not allowed to go out. So doon lang sila para ma-contain yung paghawa-hawa. Kasi nagkaroon dito ng case na evacuation center, nagkaroon yung isang evacuate na exposure doon sa COVID positive. So na-lockdown sila. So yun ang pinakamahirap sa kanila. So na-lockdown sila. So totally wala silang alam. So media lang talaga yung pinaka-source of information. Since wala silang alam, nakikisuyo pa sila kung pwedeng puntahan yung mga ganong klase ng lugar para meron silang malaman nila kung ano yung nangyari sa lugar nila. Kasi usually tayo kung saan ang pinaka-worst na sitwasyon, doon tayo, di ba? So, hindi na namin napapansin at that time yung maliliit na detalye ng balita doon sa maliliit lang yung impact. I mean, yung tama ng bagyo. So, more on doon tayo sa napakalaki ng distraction. So, since yung isang area dito na evacuation centers, yung evacuate at the time, mga evacuees at the time is about 5,000. Imagine na lockdown sila. So wala talaga silang information. So talagang nagmamakaawa sila sa media na kayo lang talaga yung pinaka-source ng information namin. So the more na mas naging passionate yung mga mamahayag at that time. Though passionate naman talaga tayo lagi. Pero mas nakita ko yung grabe na parang around the clock, 24/7. So halos wala kang pahinga na makapagtrabaho lang, makapagbalita ka para sa publiko.
Oh, parang added burden lang siya. Pero hindi siya something that would, prevent you from doing your job. Diba sabi nga natin, yung trabaho natin, this is the only, probably apart from the frontliners, this is the only job na kapag may sumasabog na bulkan, tumatakbo tayo pupunta sa bulkan. Hindi tayo tumatakbo palayo.
True.
Diba? Yan yung trabaho natin eh. When there's danger, when there's something, natural disaster, tayo yung papunta. Hindi tayo yung tumatakas from that kind of scenario or situation.
Exactly.
May mga comments lang tayo sa chat, si Jonald saying may mga na-traumatize daw sa pagpapaswab kasi merong mga kasamahan na nag-positive, may mga namatay. Yes, a lot of our colleagues, there were several colleagues who tested positive. Some of them passed away, unfortunately. Hindi na survive. Minsan naman daw, yung iba, hindi lang question of who will shoulder the cost, but adamant din mismo yung journalist na magpa-test. Yung iba daw na journalist gusto rin magpa-swab test just to make sure. Sa Facebook Messenger naman, may question dito. Under the scenario na virtual presser, how do you, journalist, assert your right to question the source? Paano kung hindi kayo nga tinatawag? What do you do? Anong naging alternative? Lumabas ba yan sa study, Prof? Meron ba silang in-offer na how do they work around it kung ayaw silang tawagin? Do they look for other sources?
So far yung sa mga nakausap ko, there's resignation that wala hindi tinanggap eh. So wala tayong magagawa if my question was, ano nangyayari daw well minsan hindi talaga tinatawag yung pangalan mo or hindi sinasali yung tanong mo or it's merged with another question. And then if that part of the question was not answered, they will deem it answered already. Even if
hindi nababalikan. Wala yung follow-up.
Oo. And then no opportunities for follow-up. And then yun ang limitation talaga. Kaya maraming frustrated sa mga Zoom press conferences. Kasi yun nga hindi mo naman pwedeng i-unmute yung sarili mo basta-basta magwala ka doon na tanong ko, hindi
I remember sa Malacanang dati, there was this reporter na itatago natin sa, wag sa pangalan, pero sa Diaryong Philippine Daily Inquirer. So yung source was not answering. Ayaw sumagot, di ba? Sinabihan talaga niya from the back, tumayo siya at sabi niya, You're the cabinet secretary. You talk. Ginanon niya. How can you do that sa Zoom? Di ba? Hindi mo na pwedeng gawin yan na persahin yung source na kumibo. Sa inyo rights, paano ang workaround din nyo doon pag hindi kayo tinatawag? What do you do? Do you call them after?
Ako madalas, yung mga critical na questions ko, hindi nila, maraming beses na hindi binabasa or hindi ako tinatawag. So ang ginawa ko, tinatawagan ko talaga tinatawagan ko by phone. Tapos naghahanap ako ng other sources. There's so many ways to get sources. Kung ayaw nila sagutin, sige. Kasi as long as na we're trying to get their side, pero kung ayaw nila sagutin, so may other sources. Tapos tinatawagan ko yung other sources na pwede ko ma-quote, tapos pwede ako makakuha ng information. So yun na lang.
Siguro at this point, I really want to end on a bit of a positive note. Kahit na medyo puro challenges yung pinag-usapan natin. Prof. Epe, can you maybe discuss a bit on one of your findings na parang there was also an effort to give marginalized voices space and airtime despite all of this? Parang among journalists, may ganun bang parang conscious effort na kahit na may reliance tayo sa official sources, try pa rin nating maghanap ng other side of the story, or people who don't have access to the media as much as official sources do.
Yeah, this was ang maganda dito, this was a global finding.
Oh, good.
That majority of journalists made an effort to interview marginalized sources to reflect yung mga diverse views o yung mga experiences ng mga tao about the pandemic. So hindi lang ito sa Pilipinas, pero sa Pilipinas, in the region where I'm working with, yung grupo na sinalihan ko within the hub, pinakamataas yung proportion sa Philippines, 66%. 66% of the journalists said that they interviewed marginalized voices. And I view this as an effort to diversify the coverage. Hindi lang puro IATF. Hindi lang puro LGU ang balita.
Exactly.
Ano yung karanasan ng mga tao sa gitna ng pandemya?
Napaka-importante nun kasi may dominant voices na nangyayari and may iba na hindi na tuloy naririnig because of those dominant voices. I'm sure even for a community journalist like Rides, ganun din yung sentimiento, di ba? Wag laging si governor, wag laging si mayor, hanap tayo ng iba at yung mga mismong nakaramdam, naka-experience on the ground, ordinary people who experience the pandemic.
Actually, ako yung mga sources ko, karamihan yung mga from the grassroots. Nandun ang balita sa grassroots, kaya kailangan lagi kang nasa labas. So yung kung kukunin mo man yung side nila, ano na lang yun, parang secondary na lang yun. But yung pinaka-gist ng story nasa grassroots. Ayun na lang, yung mga sagot na lang, counter-checking na lang kung halimbawa, meron ba talaga silang programs for the people. So counter-checking na lang yung sinabi ng mga ng community kung talagang hindi talaga namin natanggap yung mga assistance, wala talaga
ayuda.
Opo. So ganun. So counter-checking na lang kung ano yung mga lapses ng national government agencies o kaya ng local officials. Pero talaga yung pinaka-story nasa baba.
So ayun, maraming salamat Prof. Ipe. Thank you, Rides, for joining us today and sharing your insights. We look forward to the completion ng study ni na Prof para ma-present na rin natin. Ano bang estimate natin dyan, Prof, for the second semester?
Hopefully by the end of this current term, matapos na siya. That's our commitment now.
By then, we will have the study results and the new president.
Yeah, hopefully, correct. By end of this month, end of next month.
End of next month. Alam na natin kung sino ang ating next leader for the next 6 years. Okay. Thank you, Rides. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
At this point, thank you sa mga participants who are still with us. We will move to our last part of the session. This is actually going to be a combo combination. I will be discussing citizen journalism and also a mini workshop on fact-checking. Saglit lang ha, let me just share my screen. Wait lang ha. This is being challenged. Can you see it? Kita ba? Sorry, Care. Pa-check naman kung...
Yes, ma'am. Apa.
Okay. Okay. So I will be discussing citizen journalism and the global information disorder, as well as a bit of a mini workshop later on how to fight back. We are not without tools to fight back. So let's see the milestones of citizen journalism. Familiar ba kayo sa photo na ito? This is such an iconic photo noong 2001. This is called The Falling Man. Nalaglag siya from the building nung tumama yung aeroplano sa Twin Towers sa New York. So the 9/11 terrorist attack is acknowledged as the beginning of citizen journalism in the digital age. Kasi nga naman, lagi nating sinasabi, patay na si Nostradamus. Wala nang makakapag-predict kung kailan may sasabog o kailan may terrorist attack. So nung nangyari yung 9/11, this was 3 years before Facebook. Wala pang Facebook noon. Siguro si Sir Ben would remember, ang meron lang noon ay Friendster or Multiply. O, yan yung mga uso nung time na yon. Wala pa yung Facebook. Wala pang Gmail nung time na yon. Wala pang Twitter, and there was no Wi-Fi. Siguro yung mga ibang estudyante dito, shock na shock. Ano? May time na walang Wi-Fi? Oo. May panahong walang Wi-Fi po. Tapos talagang literal na dial-up modem. Tatawag ka sa telepono para makakonect ka sa internet. Tapos magdadasal ka na walang incoming call. Kasi pag may tumawag sa'yo, mapuputol yung internet mo. So when the 9/11 attacks happened, the first ones, of course, to take photos or videos of what was happening for the people on the ground. Ordinary people, hindi po journalist o mga to, walang training. Nagkataon lang na meron silang telepono, kaya nilang kumuha ng photos, kaya nilang kumuha ng videos. And the chaos became a galvanizing point for the blogging world. Kasi yung mga unang reports talaga, nasa Friendster, nasa Multiply, nasa blogs. And then of course, you have the 2004 Asian tsunami. Again, wala rin namang makakapag-predict na magkakaroon ng tsunami at that time. So for the first 24 hours, everyone was devastated. All the reported coverage were images and videos sent by people who were there in areas that were devastated by the tsunami. These were the survivors themselves. Of course, the journalists had to travel papunta doon sa area na yon. So hindi sila kaagad-agad nakarating at nakapag-report. Blogs were immediately created to inform people what was happening. Lalo na nung naghahanapan ng mga missing people. Kasi ang daming natangay ng alon, napunta kung saan-saang areas during the tsunami. And then you have the 2005 London bombings. This one, similarly, the first reports came from people who were on the scene filming the attacks on their phone. So yung BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, received 1,000 photos, videos, text messages, and even emails from people on the ground. And they even created a forum called London Explosions to gather all the accounts of people, the ordinary citizens who witnessed what happened. 2007, medyo iba na yung situation. Why? Because Facebook was already present noong 2007. So nung nagkaroon po ng Virginia Tech mass shooting, this was a mass shooting inside the school, yung students and the staff, the academe staff, they use social media sites to collect information on what was happening inside. In fact, they use Facebook to identify the victims nitong shooting incident na to. And then they immediately created tribute pages for the victims. Come 2016, or about 9 years since Facebook came into existence, meron na tayong Facebook Live. And this was a game changer for citizen journalists. Because now, hindi mo na kailangang ipadala kaagad sa media yung video mo para siya ma-broadcast. You can now live stream your video using Facebook Live. Diba? Hindi mo na kailangang isend pa sa media. Ang problema, of course, this also spawned problematic videos, like yung mga tipong nagpapakamatay tapos nag-video ng sarili nila, and these are traumatic videos for people. Or meron pang isa actually, but I'm not playing it because baka matraumatize yung mga students natin. There was this one guy who nagkagalit sila ng girlfriend niya, tapos habang nagda-drive siya, yung mga nakasalubong niya, binabaril niya. Pinapatay niya, tapos binivideohan niya yon. So this was one unintended result of Facebook Live. People use the platform not to share information, but to share something that's not supposed to be shared, like a video of a suicide or a video of mass killing. 2 years ago, December 2020, yung isang citizen journalist sa China was actually convicted, si Zhang Zhan. She was based in Shanghai, and then she went to Wuhan, where the virus was first identified. And she interviewed people. Napakasimple lang naman, parang yung interview lang niya was how are you worried sa jobs mo, sa income mo, crowded yung hospitals, just wanted to show it. But she was arrested and sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. Ang official charge sa kanya ay picking quarrels and provoking trouble. Now, why are we discussing all this? Bakit importante ang citizen journalism? Alam niyo, bago yung internet, the only way for you to reach the media, to either complain, to share something, or to raise a concern, was you either call their office landline or you send a letter to the editor. But the letter to the editor takes some time because it goes through snail mail. Hindi naman yan via email. So minsan, 1 week after mong pinadala, saka pa lang mare-receive ng media. Tapos by that time, hindi na siya balita kasi panis na yung concern mo or na-resolve na yung concern mo. With the advent of technology, with the advent of internet and digital platforms, naiba ngayon yung sitwasyon. On one hand, it democratized a lot. It democratized the news gathering and also democratized the feedback mechanism. Why do I say it democratized the two? Kung may mali ang media ngayon, napakadali nang mag-comment sa Facebook. Napakadali mag-comment sa Twitter to tell us na, uy, mali yung report mo. So much so na minsan mga cancel culture. Diba, imbis na sabihan lang na nagkamali ka, tatawagin ka pang fake news or prostitute. On the other hand, nagkaroon din ng democratization of news gathering. Dati, media lang ang nagdidikta under the old model. Media nagdidikta ano ang balita. We decide what goes into the newspapers. We decide what goes into the TV programs, the news programs sa gabi. Pero ngayon, malaki ang possibility na something happens on social media first and then media will pick it up. So people are now telling us na, hey, eto yung issue sa amin. Eto yung importante sa amin. Diba baka mamaya nagkakandamatay kayo sa pag-cover ng politiko. Ang importante pala sa tao ay may bukas na manhole sa area nila. Or walang banyo yung eskwelahan nila. So that's where citizen journalism comes into play. Citizen journalism is the act of non-professionals, let's emphasize, these are not journalists, these are ordinary people playing an active role in the process of collecting, reporting, analyzing, and disseminating news and information. So it's also called in other textbooks, they also call it participatory journalism, we media, or bottom-up news. So in a way, citizen journalists also become watchdogs over the real gatekeepers, over the media, because they also monitor our reports and they're prepared to expose us if necessary. And citizen journalism really contributes to giving a voice to the voiceless. However, we also acknowledge that while the digital platforms have democratized the news gathering process and feedback mechanism, it also allowed the propagation of false information, disinformation, and malinformation. So at this point, let's play a little game para makita natin kung gising pa kayo. There is no need to research. Hindi nyo po kailangan mag-Google. Sagutin nyo lang ng yes or no. Depende dun sa tingin ninyo ay tamang sagot. Bale, gut feel lang po ito. Hindi kailangan mag-research. So una, may teenager na pinagmultahan ng 100 pounds kasi pinakain niya yung chips, chichirya niya sa mga ibon. True or false? I cannot other. I can see na pala. Wait. Nagkamali ako ng pindot. But, sorry, what were the answers, Care? I could not see the...
Sumasagot po ng true. Actually, lahat po true.
Okay. So, it's actually true.
False pala yan.
Yeah. It's true because hindi naman bawal magpakain sa ibon, pero pag kumalat yung pinakain mo, then you're fined for littering. Siya po yung actual na pinagbayad. Yung si Miss Smith was the one who was asked to pay 100 pounds. Next one, a camel survives after losing half of its body. True or false?
And may sumagot po ng false. And halos lahat po false.
Halos lahat false, and that is correct. Okay? Ang pwede lang mag-survive ng ganyang sitwasyon ay 1, jellyfish, 2, ano pa ba? Lizard.
Mga geckos po, ma'am. Mga geckos.
Geckos, yes. Lizards will survive. Cockroaches will actually survive. But not a camel, okay? So this is actually a manipulated photo. Kita nyo naman na binura siya. From the left and right, makikita nyo yung tamang photo at yung manipulated photo. Next one, NASA is installing internet on the moon. True or false?
Sumagot po ng true, false.
Mas maraming false.
True, false, true.
Tingnan natin. Nanonood ba kayo ng Transformers? Parang ito yung ng Dark Side of the Moon nila na pelikula. It's actually true. As early as 2020, NASA and Nokia were already putting up a 4G network on the moon. Kaya yung mga moon rovers, nakakapagpadala sila sa atin ng photos from the moon, from what they take from the moon. Next one, I think this is the last one. Police in Germany rescue a man being chased by a baby squirrel. True or false?
And sumagot po ng true, false, true, false, then true na po yung halos na.
Okay, this is actually true. That is the actual squirrel who was chasing the guy. Apparently, siya ay may phobia ng squirrels, so had to be rescued. Kasi parang umakyat pa siya ng tree para lang iwasan itong terror squirrel na to. Okay, so because you did not do research, paano nyo ngayon binuo sa utak ninyo yung automatic ninyong sagot? If it's a yes or if it's a false, if it's false or true. Dito lumalabas ngayon ang biases natin. Our biases come into play when we assess information. We filter based on our biases. And ano bang biases ito? Una, availability heuristic or availability bias. Kung ano ang natatandaan natin, pinoprogram natin yung utak natin na ito ay importante at mas malamang sa hindi, ito ay totoo. Kasi ang equation natin, if we remember it, then it must be important. So kung matagal-tagal nang inukil-kil sa utak ninyo, halimbawa na ano bang pwedeng matagal nang sinabi sa inyo ng mga magulang ninyo, na kapag Holy Week ay bawal maligo. Ay hindi, that's not a factual ano. Or in some areas, they say na kapag what do you call this? Kapag ikaw ay pagod, huwag kang maligo dahil ikaw ay mapapasma. Diba? O yung concept ng pasma is not actually very scientific, pero dahil matagal siyang sinasabi sa iyo ng parents niyo, matagal lang naging available sa inyo yung ganung information, you tend to remember it and you tend to believe that it is true. Meron din tayong tinatawag na confirmation bias. Ano ang confirmation bias? Ang tendency natin na kapag mas malapit sa ating sariling paniniwala or sariling beliefs or values, we believe that it is true. This is especially happening kapag tayo ay nahaharap sa isang emotionally charged issue. Ngayon, mararamdaman niyo yan, especially during the elections. Diba, kung talagang loyalista ka, either for any candidate, whether it's Marcos, whether it's Robredo, Lacson, Dumago, Moreno, or who else? Si Calyodi, diba, or si Pacquiao. Kung very emotional yung paniniwala mo na siya yung best president, mahirap kang papaniwalain ng ibang pananaw kahit pabigyan ka ng sandamakmak na katotohanan. Kasi ang hinahanap mo is yung naka-align sa sarili mong pananaw. Meron din tayong tinatawag na authority bias. Ang authority bias, pag mula pagkabata, tinuturo sa atin na huwag mong questionin yung pananaw ng mas nakakatanda sa'yo or people in authority. We tend to believe what they say. Diba? Halimbawa, kahit mali yung sinabi ng magulang ninyo, konti lang siguro sa atin yung magsasabi na, ay mami, alam mo mali ka. Or kung halimbawa, mali yung teacher nyo, hindi nyo siya kaagad sisitahin na, ma'am or sir, mali po yung tinuturo ninyo sa amin. Because ang tinuro sa atin is huwag questionin ang authority ng tao na nasa in a position. At dito nagkakaroon tuloy ng problema because hindi naman sila perfect people. Walang taong perfecto sa mundo at lahat ay nagkakamali. So even people in authority can make mistakes and we should be able to question them pag sila ay nagkakamali. So ano ba ang categories of information disorder? Merong 3 categories. Misinformation, ito yung simpleng nag-share ka ng false information pero wala ka namang intensyon na manakit. So halimbawa, pre-pandemic, usong-uso yung hashtag walang pasok, di ba? Pero lahat tayo excited tumingin sa Facebook kung may nag-post na ba yung DepEd or yung LGU natin na walang pasok. Sa sobrang excitement mo dahil umuulan, shinare mo kaagad yung, walang pasok sa Nueva Ecija ng April 22 hanggang 23. Pero yun pala, 2009 pa yon. 2022 na ngayon. Nagkamali ka lang naman. Wala kang intention manloko. You were only misinformed. Nag-click ka lang kaagad sa link without checking it. Pero yung disinformation, kaya siya naiiba kasi meron ka talagang intention manakit. Alam mo nang mali, shinare mo pa rin dahil meron kang gustong saktan or meron kang gustong ipakalat talaga na mali. Malinformation naman, ito yung pinakamahirap actually na mahuli dito sa ganitong 3 klaseng information disorder. Kasi ang malinformation, nagsasabi ka ng totoo, pero maaaring hindi buong katotohanan. Bits and pieces of true information na kung kulang, pwede mong i-interpret in another way. Or, posible rin na correct information pero hindi dapat sinishare dahil kapag sinare ay nakakasakit. Ang halimbawa nun ay, mag-boyfriend-girlfriend tayo. Tapos, in the process, marami tayong photos na kumuha tayo ng photos na medyo hindi pang public sharing, di ba? Para sa atin lang. Kaya lang, nung naghiwalay tayo, pinost mo yun sa Facebook lahat ng medyo intimate photos na yon. Those photos are not false. Those photos are accurate and true. But it is malinformation because you are causing harm. So makikita niyo sa Venn diagram, saan sila nagtatagpo. Ang nasa gitna talaga ay disinformation. Kasi present yung element ng falseness, present din yung element ng intent to harm. So actually, sa mga journalists, nilalabanan namin yung term na fake news. We don't agree that we should be using fake news to describe this because news is never fake. News is vetted, news is accurate, news is checked. So hindi pwedeng fake news dapat ang itawag dito. What's better is if we use the specific term. If it's in misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. Pero ang sure tayo, yung genuine content taken out of context and weaponized by people who know that falsehoods based on kernel of truth are most likely to be believed and shared. So agents of disinformation have learned that using genuine content, totoong content, but reframed in new and misleading ways will more likely deceive people. So halimbawa, itong manipulated content na itong photo ng batang ito is actually a protest demonstration. Role-playing sila to show kung paano masama yung immigration policy. Now, somebody used this photo and made it appear na totoong hinuli yung bata. Sorry, pag dire-diretso yung pagsasalita. This one. So ito naman, impostor content. Nagpapanggap silang media. They use the logos of real media. They even use elements of media websites. Halimbawa, may breaking news, may nakalagay na byline, itsurang BBC halimbawa. But these are false websites. These are not correct websites. Ito naman ay you manipulate photos. Pinagsama nila dalawang magkaibang photo, pinagsama nila para pagbukain na habang nakapila para sa isang election, hinuli yung illegal immigrant ng ICE. ICE is the immigration police. So makikita nyo na magkaiba siyang photos, pero nung pinagsama na, unless kita mo talaga yung play ng shadows at kung paano minanipulate yung photo, maaari kang maniwala na talagang nanghuhuli sila habang ongoing yung elections. Meron actually mas mahirap dito but we didn't put an example here. Yung tinatawag na deep fake. I don't know if you've encountered that term. Deep fakes is yung video tama, pero yung sinasabi niya hindi tama dun sa video. Pinapatungan nila yung boses ng totoong nagsasalita. Now let's play a little game. Paano ba nangyayari ang fake news or malinformation, misinformation, and disinformation? Mabilis lang to ha. This is actually this can be played as early as high school. I think can understand this game. Kasi what we want nga is for for young kids to know how to see kung alin ang totoo at alin ang hindi. So you're here for the information of disinformation and fake news tycoon. That's correct. We start with frustration kasi sabi natin merong confirmation bias, di ba? Kung parehas tayong frustrated or galit about something, mas dadami ang followers natin. So let's vent on Twitter. This government is a complete and utter failure. #resign. #losers. Tweet this. So sabi niya, hindi pa raw tayo ganun ka-credible. Kung titingnan ninyo sa taas, upper left, 8 pa lang yung followers natin sa ngayon. So let's gain some real influence. So meron siyang konting followers but we want to raise our credibility. We will borrow somebody's credibility first. We will impersonate someone important. And who better to impersonate than the president of in this case, of the United States of America. So as your president, I have issued an executive order to rename Canada to North Dakota, #YouGotAnnexed. So pag-tweet natin, naging 39 followers na tayo kaagad. May mga naniwala na tayo talaga si Joe Biden. Pero napansin niyo ba na ang spelling ng Biden niya, ang dulo ay N-ye at hindi N? Tapos yung 46th President of the United States of America, maraming mga umlaut dun sa vowels niya. So let's have a look at how people are reacting to our tweet. Merong, oh my God, is he serious? #Leave Canada alone. So tingnan ninyo ha, yung galit natin na post kanina, nilalabanan ni Jane, pero in the process, nabubuhay yung maling post kasi from one hashtag, nagkikreate na ngayon ng iba pang hashtag. In this case, Leave Canada Alone. So nagiging mukhang totoo tuloy. Meron din naman nag-agree. Awesome, we need this. #You got annex. How are we feeling? Ang mga nagpapakalat ng maling balita, ng misinformation at disinformation, wala yung moral objections. Okay, karamihan po dyan bayad. Yung mga hindi bayad, mas malamang sa hindi, misinformed. Pero yung bayad at nananadyang magpakalat pa rin ng maling information, walang moral objections yan. So anong next step natin? Siyempre hindi tayo hihinto doon. Gusto natin marami pa tayong maloko. Let's do a website. So ayan yung pangalan ng website natin. The Cosmos Post covers everything. Pero kailangan natin ng job title. Hindi tayo pwedeng works at Krusty Krab. Alam ka agad ng mga tao na hindi tayo totoo. We will pretend to be the editor-in-chief of the Cosmos Post. We need a slogan. So ang slogan natin ay bursting the mainstream media bubble. So in the process, we even positioned ourselves as the alternative to mainstream media. So the Cosmos Post is now the basis of our fake news empire. And we earned a badge, which is the impersonation badge. If you want to play this, you just go to www.getbadnews.com. Marami pang badges to earn para maintindihan ninyo paano gumagana yung utak ng isang manipulator sa social media. So according to an Oxford study, there is evidence of organized social media manipulation campaign in 70 countries. And this was only in 2018. So can you imagine now, under the pandemic, malamang sa hindi, mas mataas na po ito ngayon. Social media has become co-opted by authoritarian regimes. Pero pinakamatindi pa rin talaga ang number 3, Facebook. Facebook po talaga nagagamit ang social manipulation. Dito sa Pilipinas, I think this is especially true because we have what we call free data for Facebook. Hindi nyo kailangan mag-subscribe sa kahit na anong data package. You can access Facebook, nakikita nyo yung photo, yung headline, pero pag click ninyo, hindi nyo mababasa yung totoong story. So maraming naluloko tuloy. Hindi na nila binabasa kung ano yung story, pinapaniwalaan na lang nila yung headline saka yung photo, tapos isi-share na lang nila ng isi-share. So anong consequences of the information disorder? There's erosion of trust in journalism. Imbis na tayo yung top choice for real information, tayo patuloy yung pinagdududahan na parang nagpapakalat ng fake news. It undermines the importance of press freedom and freedom of expression. So, di ba ngayon sa Facebook, usong-uso yan eh. Yung #respect my opinion. Of course, we respect your opinion, but we will challenge your facts. Magkaiba naman po yun. And malicious targeting of critics. But then again, disinformation is nothing new. Noon pa po yan may disinformation. Nagkataon lang na ngayon, because of technology, napabilis at na-weaponize ang disinformation. Meron ako example dito. Ito naman na example ng malinformation. Kung kayo ay Katoliko, you believe the story of the Garden of Eden. Hindi pa yung snake who offered Eve to take a bite of the apple. Ang ginawa niya ay malinformation. Totoo na if you bite the apple, you gain knowledge. Pero ang hindi niya sinabi is that you gain knowledge and you get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So since the time of Jesus Christ, uso na po ang disinformation, malinformation at misinformation. But a more recent sample, not as old as the Garden of Eden, 1938 kay Joseph Stalin. Yung tao sa kanan niya, Joseph Stalin is the one in the middle. Yung tao sa left side niya ay ang kanyang secret police head, si Nikolai Yezhov. Nung sila po ay nag-away, pinapatay niya si Yezhov. At hindi siya nakontento doon, pinabura niya si Yezhov sa lahat ng official photos na para bang hindi nag-exist itong taong to. So manipulation of media content of photos existed even way before kahit wala pang internet. Pero ano yun, tatanggapin na lang ba natin? Ganon na lang ba yun? Siyempre hindi. Kaya nga tayo nag-aaral eh. Kaya kayo nasa university at colleges ninyo. We have tools to fight back. Kung online ang ginagamit nila to fool us and mag-propagate ng disinformation, online tools din ang gagamitin natin para labanan ng disinformation. So very quickly, you check your URL. Siguraduhin yung tama yung website na titingnan ninyo. Baka mamaya, false or impostor website siya. You do vertical and lateral reading. Tingnan ninyo pababa yung website. Sino ang about us nila? Sino ang mga nakadeclare? Baka mamaya ito naman na isang satirical website. Diba? Some people not aware that it's a satirical website. Akala nila totoo. Halimbawa sa Facebook, meron dyan yung The Philippine Dairy Inquirer, gatas, the Dairy Inquirer, or Philippine Char instead na Philippine Star. And then you do lateral reading. Kung nabasa mo na sa website na yon, sigurado kang tama, i-check mo pa rin sa ibang website yung information. I-cross-check natin kung tama ba. We use search operators. Kapag ang Google search kasi, without search operators, sandamakmak yung ibibigay niyang resulta sa atin. But if we know how to use the search operators, malilimit natin yung resulta and we are more likely to get to the correct results. You do reverse image search. I will teach you how to do this later. You check the metadata of your photos and you follow fact-checking websites. So to check the URL, you can go to lookup.icon.org. This is one website that we use to check the URL ng website. So pag sinerch niyo yung CNN.com, ilalabas niya na siya ay owned by Turner Broadcasting System, naka-headquarters sa Atlanta, Georgia, phone number, mailing address, etc. Pero pag chinek ninyo ang cnn.com.net.ph, di ba ganyan yung uso sa mga fake na websites? Ang haba ng mga dot niya sa dulo. Sasabihin niya sa'yo na there's no registered server under this domain. Alam mo na kaagad na mali yung URL mo. Now, if you use Google search, pag nilagay mo na Rodrigo Duterte lang, it will give
yung
you...
nag-aano sa amin yung mga journalist ng ABS-CBN. Mga journalist ng ABS-CBN.
Yung gustong mag-comment, okay lang naman. Pero after ng session natin, naririnig ko na ABS-CBN journalist yung comment niya. After the session,
turn off muna natin yung ano natin yung audio. Oo. Later na po. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so pag nakita ninyo, 10.2 million kaagad yung search results kay Rodrigo Duterte. Pero kung ang hinahanap mo ay Rodrigo Duterte, Sara Duterte, 2.2 million, marami pa rin. Pwede mo pa yung pauntiin para mahanap mo lang talaga yung resulta na merong Rodrigo Duterte and Sara Duterte. You use the search operator na and. And is like the mathematical equation of plus. Sinasabi mo na, oy Google, ang ibigay mo lang sa akin yung merong Rodrigo Duterte at may Sara Duterte. Kung Rodrigo lang, ayoko niyan. Kung Sara lang, ayoko niyan. Ang gusto ko parehas silang present. So kung mapapansin niyo yung search results, nasa 834,000 na lang. madami pa rin, pero kumpara sa 10.2 million, sobrang bawas na yung search results na makukuha ninyo. Pwede rin Duterte minus Sara. Meaning lahat ng Duterte pero ayokong andon si Sara Duterte. So pwede kanyang bigyan ng Rodrigo Duterte, pwede kanyang bigyan ng Paulo Duterte or Baste Duterte, basta walang Sara Duterte. Pwede rin naman na kung may hinahanap pa yung specific na quotation, ilalagay natin siya literal sa isang open and closed quotes. So Rodrigo Duterte killed them all. Hahanapin niya yung eksaktong quote na yan. Kung wala yung quote na yan, hindi niya isasama sa search results. Maaari naman ang hinahanap mo ay isang specific na file type. Naghahanap ka ng academic papers on Rodrigo Duterte. So Rodrigo Duterte file type PDF. Kasi karamihan sa academic papers ay naka-PDF at lahat ng ilalabas niya ay PDF results lang. So wala dyang photo, walang website lang, puro PDF lang yan. Pwede rin namang hanapin natin si Duterte sa isang specific lang na website. Halimbawa, Duterte site inquirer.net. Lahat ng resulta niya, manggagaling lang sa inquirer.net. So wala siyang kukuhain sa ABS-CBN, wala siyang kukuhain sa GMA News, puro lang sa inquirer.net. Ngayon, pag tinignan itong photo na to, mukha ba siyang totoo? Para siyang totoong video grab ng CNN. Medyo malabo lang pero kita nyo pa rin sa baba yung CNN logo, meron siyang title, at may breaking news na ticker. Kaya lang, ina-announce niya, hospitals on lockdown as first COVID vaccine patients start eating other patients. So naging zombie yung mga pasyente ng COVID. Pero pag sinearch mo yung photo na yan, bago pa pala magkaroon ng pandemic, yung photo na yan. It was actually taken sa Temple Bay Hospital. It was published by New York Times in 2019. So totoong namatay yung pasyente, pero una walang COVID at ikalawa hindi siya naging zombie. So itong photo na to, ang sabi nila, this was taken daw sa Italy during the COVID-19 pandemic and mukha siyang totoo. People are wearing PPEs, may mga mass grave na nakahilera, may Red Cross na truck na may logo ng Red Cross. Pero kung i-Google image search, ay paano ang kaibahan nito sa normal na Google search? Sa Google search, ikaw magsasabi kay Google na Google, hanapan mo ko ng image ng pandemic. Pero sa reverse image search, ikaw ang may photo. Ibibigay mo kay Google, hahanapin ni Google yung photo mo. Kaya na makikita nyo, drop image here. So ilalapag natin yung image na yun kanina at ang ilalabas ni Google na resulta ay, again, hindi yan pandemic photo. This was actually a screen grab from a movie ng 2011. It was about the virus infection, but it's definitely not the COVID-19 pandemic. Ngayon, bakit ko nilapag ang photo ni Jennifer Lopez dyan? Si Jennifer Lopez ang dahilan kung bakit tayo may Google reverse search. Specifically, yung damit na suot-suot ni Jennifer Lopez. When she wore that Donatella Versace dress, wala pang reverse image search nun. So people took photos of the dress and then started asking Google, what is this dress? Jennifer Lopez wore, etc., started describing the dress. And that's when Google realized, may market pala for a reverse image search. Kasi wala silang search results para dun sa image search na yan. Yung photo na yan, sa unang tingin, could be taken from any Asian country where there is winter and there's also Chinese lanterns. Pag tinignan ninyo, photo lang yung nakikita nyo. Pero ang photos ninyo, marami pong detalye ang photos which we cannot see. And this is what you call the metadata. If we know how to get the metadata of photos, malalaman natin yung detalye ng photos na yan. So we can use metadata2go.com again, we drop the image and then we see that it was taken on January 20 this year. It was taken in China. AFP ang may-ari, Agence France Press. May caption siya, "A man walks past a tree decorated with lanterns sa Jingshan Park." Ang kumuha, ang photographer si Jade Gao. So maraming detalye ang photos. It's just up to us to get the metadata. And then of course, you follow the fact-checking websites. There's Verifiles, there's check.ph. And again, we're all entitled to our own opinion, but not to our own facts. Yan yung ating gustong labanan talaga. Teka, how do I stop siya? There you go. So that's the end of the discussion. Yung hindi namin kayo tinuturuan kung ano ang false, kung ano ang totoo at hindi. What we want to happen is to equip you, bigyan kayo ng tools para kayo mismo ang mag-double check kung tama ba o mali yung information na meron kayo. Halimbawa, pag sinabihan kayo na 500,000 katao ang kasya dito sa lugar na to sa isang political rally ng isang kandidato, binigay sa'yo yung photo, i-double check ninyo. Dito ba talaga sa Pilipinas yan nangyari? Baka naman yung biking event na yan sa Malaysia pala, hindi dito sa Pilipinas. Yung bang area kung saan kinuha ay yung area yung kiniklaim nila kung saan nagkaroon ng rally. Kasya ba doon ang 500,000 katao o 500,000 na sibuyas ang magkakasya doon? Things like that we can double check if we just know how to use the tools that we showed to you earlier. So ayun, on that note, kung meron kayong questions, please drop them sa chat box. Kanina may nagko-comment ng ABS-CBN. Sino kaya yun? Baka gusto mong erase yung question kanina? Kung may questions kayo, you are free to put them sa... madali bang maintindihan kung paano yung tinuro namin?
Yes po.
Wow.
Madali siyang gamitin.
Very explainable po.
O, sino ito? Uli,
Sino nagsasalita?
Francesca po.
Hi, Francesca. Very good, Francesca.
Tapos ang gawin natin, huwag nating sarilinin itong information na to.
Yeah.
Ikalat natin. Mahalaga na i-share natin sa, kahit sa hindi natin friends, kahit sa kaaway natin, i-share natin itong information na to. Alam mo, ang importante talaga, lahat tayo marunong mag-fact check.
Correct. Actually, pwede nilang gawin sa loob ng bahay, no? They can do a little game. Di ba? Parang pa-contest kayo, di ba? Isang grupo dito, ganun. O si Francesca, kunyari, ang mag-lead.
Oo. Ipapaalala lang natin kapag kayo ay naggagawa ng fact-checking, huwag tayong bastos. Number 1. Maging magalang tayo sa proseso ng pag-fact check. Kasi isipin niyo rin yung pakiramdam nung naka-fact check. Baka naman hindi niya sinasadyang magkamali, di ba? Or baka ma-pride din siya. Baka imbis na aminin niya na siya ay nagkamali, i-insist patuloy niya na siya yung tama. So ang gusto natin maliwanagan yung tao. Hindi natin gustong mang-away. Lalo na kung ang i-fact check nyo, nanay nyo. Please lang. Baka mamaya may mga mag-away na nanay at anak dito. Okay lang mag-fact check ng magulang, but do it in a way that's very respectful.
Respectful pa rin. Oo. Polite. Oo.
Polite, respectful. Otherwise, wala kayong breakfast the next day. Yung pagluto ng nanay ninyo. Ay, salamat Eloisa. Sabi niya very informative. Sulit daw sa ang time sa pagtutok.
Very good.
Kung wala kayong questions, I'm happy because that means you understood kung ano yung presentation kanina. So yun lang even among us journalists, marami pa rin sa amin nagkakamali. Meron pa rin naluloko. Pero ang importante doon, huwag tayong mapagod mag-fact check. Gawin natin yun. Di ba pag sinabi sa yung umuulan sa labas, huwag mong paniwalaan ka agad. Buksan ang bintana at i-double check kung tumitirik ba yung araw o umuulan ba talaga. Kasi hindi naman tayo, isa rin tayong utak, di ba? Hindi tayo mangmang. Sayang yung utak natin kung hindi natin gagamitin to double check kung anong information na kinakaharap natin. Si Hannah Pearl, sabi niya, thank you ma'am, we learned a lot. Salamat Jonah Chris at nag-enjoy kayo. Pero yun lang din talaga, ang pakiusap na namin sa PPI, that's why we are doing this. Alam niyo yung mga estudyanteng katulad ninyo, napaka-importante ng role na gagampanan ninyo. 20 years from now, kayo na yung either you'll be in position of authority, kayo yung boboto sa mga next na leaders natin. It's very important that you are equipped with the tools para makapag-fact-checking and mag-verify. So ayun, baka wala nang tanungan ba haba na ng aking discussion. Thank you, Angelique. May nagtatanong dito, pwede raw humingi ng copy ng PPTs. Ariel, di ba send to them?
Ina-upload namin siya sa PPI website, www.philpressinstitute.net. Merong kategorya doon na resources. You can find the material of a seminar. Katulad nito, presentation ng mga speakers. Doon philpressinstitute.net. Ayun, meron po tayo doon. Para hindi na kami mag-i-email sa inyo.
Yeah, tama.
Oo.
So ang una pong step dyan, you go to the website of PPI, check the resources section, and also add us on Facebook, add PPI, add Seidel. Para makita niyo po kung ano pa yung mga next namin na events, mga seminars or trainings na pwede po ninyong daluhan. So maraming salamat sa over 100 pa rin, Mataas pa rin ang ating participants to remain up until this point. This is Joyce Pañares, Seminar Director of the Philippine Press Institute. And I turn you over now to Ariel Sabilino, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Joyce. Maraming salamat. Ito yung fun siya kasi real time, merong feedback, Sir Ben, Oo. Natutuwa kami kasi hopefully we have encouraged you to attend or participate in other training programs ng PPI. Kasi madami kaming ginagawa. Every month, meron kaming podcast, meron kaming roundtable discussion, we call it RTD. Tapos meron kaming, katulad dito, Scholastic Press Outreach Program. Tapos, and then, i-plug natin, siguro kanina, before we started the program, meron kaming i-plug na mga forthcoming activities ng PPI. So on Monday, it's going to be the National Press Forum. It's a big event ng mga print media practitioners, especially mga members ng Philippine Press Institute. Again, binanggit na ni Miss Joyce kanina, go to the FB page ng PPI and search yung meme na yon on the NPF National Press Forum. Tapos, tingnan nyo yung registration link, Google registration link, para makapag-attend kayo ngayong Monday, di ba? At this point, siguro pwede nating tawagin si Professor Ben Domingo.
Yes.
Oo, for his closing remarks. Tatay Ben, ayun, maraming salamat sa iyo, Tatay Ben. Kami po ay buong puso nagpapasalamat for this big attendance of ours. So ayun. Sir Ben?
Mapagpalayang pagbati sa lahat sa inyo sa Philippine Press Institute at dito sa ating webinar tungkol sa media at saka sa pandemic at sa ating tatlong sinasaluduhan kong resource speakers. Natutuwa ako dahil sinusundan ko hindi lamang yung mga lectures, hindi yung mga comments. At ang dami nag-ipag-chat sa akin.
True.
Habang ako ay nakikinig, galing sa kung saan-saan. Mga galing ng Cagayan, ng Ilocos, ng Isabela, ng Quirino, ng Nueva Ecija, hindi lamang Nueva Ecija. Dahil nitong huling ilang araw ay inisip ko na hindi lang taga Nueva Ecija ang dapat maginabang. At sana ay marami pang mga ganitong mga pagkakataong may paabot natin, hindi lamang sa mga kapwa natin sa media, kundi lalong-lalo na sa medyang pang-campus, mga advisors, mga student editors and writers, at mga nagtuturo ng media and information literacy.
Yes.
May nakita ko kanina na nagtuturo ng MIL sa ilang senior high schools at yung dalawa ay nagpasalamat pa sa akin dahil magagamit daw nila yung kanilang natutunan dito. Kaya't natutuwa ako doon sa mga mahigit na sa halos 200 na narito sa Zoom at sa mahigit na 300 di umano doon sa live stream. Dahil hindi nyo hinayaang makalagpas ito nang hindi tayo nakiisa upang kahit paano ay mabigyan tayo ng dagdag na kaalaman at kakayahan sa mga isyong may kaugnayan sa journalism, sa mainstream journalism, sa community journalism, sa citizen journalism at pati na sa campus journalism. Saludo ako sa inyo, pero sa panahong ito, kailangang ipaalala ko na iba yung ingat palagi. Ingat tayo dahil sa pandemya at ingat tayo doon sa mga nag-iisip na pakitirin ang kalayaan nating tinatamasa sa isang malaya at demokratikong lipunan. Saludo ako sa inyo. Sana ay marami pang ganito. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you po, Sir Ben. At kami ay patuloy na magbibigay ng makabulang programa sa PPI. Napag-iisipan namin talaga para meron po kaming contribution, sinasabi natin, sa lipunan na ginagalawan natin. O meron nag-date sa inyo dito, Tatay Ben. Lolo Ben naman. Ayun.
Actually, Sir Ariel, basahin mo yung gawing dulo, daming Lolo Ben. Nalimutan ko malaking bahagi galing sa Isabela. Yung kahulihan si Sir Gragasin, galing sa isang maliit na barangay sa Tubar sa Jones, Isabela.
Naku, salamat po at nakarating kayo ngayon. At sana dumalo pa kayo sa aming mga activities, Sir. Nasa page namin, sa Facebook page ng PPI. Ayun po, yan lang po ang time natin ngayon. At Friday ngayon, at sana ma-enjoy niyo yung weekend ninyo with your family and friends. And also have a prayerful Sunday, this coming Sunday. Again, to get your certificates, we are going to flash, andito na yata Joyce, no? Nasa chat room na namin yung link for the survey questionnaire. Nasa chat na. Please do answer the evaluation form para malaman namin kung ano pa yung pwede namin ibigay ng mga programa sa PPI para po sa inyo. Ayun. Maraming salamat, Seidel Foundation, for your support. Ayun. At saka sa academic community din. Maraming salamat sa ating technical and production team, sila Care, sila Risa, si Ate Bess, si Priscilla, si Rog, si Sheila. Ayun. Maraming salamat sa iyo, Joyce. Hanggang sa muli. Everyone, thank you.
See you Monday.
See you Monday. Please do not forget to register.
Very important.
Nako, National Press Forum of the Philippine Press Institute. Okay? Facebook page, everyone, go to the Facebook page. Makikita nyo yung publicity dun or PubMat. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Ingat-ingat.